channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very nice to see you on this Thursday morning. Weren't sure we were going to see anyone or you see us or hear us, but here we are, and a few technical things to iron out this morning. Eamonn and Isabel here, and the Prime Minister is not here, because where is he, Isabel?
He is in Washington. It is his first ever trip to the White House today. He'll be in the Oval Office having a meeting with President Biden. Let's speak to Ben Habib, who joins us in the studio this morning to talk about all this, member and advisor, of course, to Reform Party. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
An important moment to see the Prime Minister in the White House. How significant do you see this as?
Well, I think it's the fourth time he's met President Biden in as many months. And if you judge Rishi Sunak by his body language, there's quite a good relationship there, or at least Rishi Sunak has admiration almost flowing through his physical being when he looks at Joe Biden. And I suppose, in a sense, that embodies the special relationship with Rishi Sunak feels. I'm not so convinced it's reciprocated. You sort of get the impression, again, just looking at the physical...
Unrequited love.
It's a sort of unrequited love. And it's ever been thus, Eamonn, hasn't it? You know, you look at the United Kingdom, we champion the special relationship. Whenever we talk about the US, we talk about it through that prism. But if you look at the last 25 years of foreign policy, it's always the United Kingdom toddling off after the US like a little puppy dog with its tail wagging, and then forever being let down. You know, so we followed the US into Iraq. They, in essence, got the spoils of Iraq. They got the rights to drill oil. They got the oil proceeds. We followed them into Afghanistan. We spent 20 years there. A couple of £100 billion later, we wake up one morning, the US is gone. And, you know, we've done the same in Ukraine. We are following the US hook, line and sinker in their policy to support Zelensky. We put $2.5 billion in last year. We're going to put another $2.5 billion in this year. The US did $75 billion last year. But we all know that ultimately it'll be the Americans' decision on where Ukraine ends up. And so I think the special relationship, as valuable as we see it, I'm not sure it's really...
Worth the paper it's written on.
Worth the paper it's written on. Yeah.
But, you know, he's done more for repairing that relationship, hasn't he, than any of his recent predecessors. And you certainly get the feel... Rishi Sunak has done. He's doing his very best, is he not? I mean, he's a bit of a... what's the equivalent of an Anglophile?
Biden comes to the United Kingdom, he appears in Belfast city centre, and the Prime Minister's nowhere beside him. That is the oddest thing.
It was very strange. It was a snub, for sure. And he didn't come to the King's coronation, which lots of people could see as a snub as well.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think that the administration, whether it's Biden himself, but those close to him, recognise, whether you like the Windsor framework or not, it's more in alignment with their views on the EU, and it has definitely opened some doors. And the way we've seen him just overnight, I mean, people will be waking up to these pictures, wearing the baseball jacket, the bomber jacket out on the
But
pitch.
he can't wear cool stuff, can he?
What's the equivalent of an Anglophile, if you're talking about American? He's a real American-phile, if you like. He loves it, doesn't he?
He really does. And I think he sort of sees himself as a bit of a maverick, too. Do you remember when he put that helmet on with Zelensky approaching a jet? His head couldn't take it, though, and his body can't quite take the American sports jacket either. But, I mean, you're quite right, Eamonn, to bring up Northern Ireland. You know, when President Biden was in Northern Ireland, he said, in order to preserve peace in Northern Ireland, we must have the institutions of Northern Ireland working again. And prima facie, that comes across as an imploration for peace. But actually, it's a threat of violence, if you think about it, because what he's saying is if you don't restore the institutions of Northern Ireland, that's the end of peace. And he was kind of holding Rishi Sunak's arm behind his back. So you talk about the Windsor Framework. It is a SOP. The Windsor Framework is the United Kingdom's giving a SOP to the US and the EU at vast constitutional cost, putting a partition between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I mean, I think it's something the history books are going to look back at and wonder how it was that a great nation like the United Kingdom could voluntarily put a partition down its own middle without a single shot being fired.
Nobody is governing Northern Ireland, or if they are, they're civil servants based in London who are, you know, making these decisions. There was an amazing situation yesterday with the biggest school in Northern Ireland, 2,000 pupils in a grammar school. and the parents had voted for that school to be integrated, so to have both religions as a Protestant school now. And times have moved on, and what an amazing thing. But it has to be implemented by the government in Northern Ireland, except we don't have a government in Northern Ireland.
It is an extraordinary situation,
So you just end up with nothing happening and no progress. And a lot of these kids, of course, who know nothing about the Troubles, so they're saying, well...
What is all this about?
And this is the great threat that the union now faces, because everyone looking at Northern Ireland, rightly or wrongly, I think wrongly, look at unionism as the cause of this. Say, well, you know, it's the DUP not allowing Stormont to be restored. It's the DUP who are stuck in the trenches with their hard hats on, permanently manning, you know, their rifles, fighting off this threat to the United Kingdom. And it's Sinn Féin out there making the optimistic message about growth, about, I mean, they're very woke, but, you know, they use all of that to capture electoral support, whereas the DUP is kind of in defensive mode. And I wrote an article about this the other day in the Belfast newsletter, saying that we urgently need political unionism to come forward with an optimistic vision for Northern Ireland, championing stuff that Northern Ireland can independently do to get back on its feet as a tiger economy. Why shouldn't it be a tiger economy?
No.
And we could do with an optimistic vision, I think, for the whole of the UK.
We certainly could.
And all our policies.
Well, Ben, thank you very much for that analysis. I know we've got you a little bit later on in the programme, but for now we turn to Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, a political psychologist. Good morning to you. We're talking a little bit about Northern Ireland. Unlikely, probably, that Rishi Sunak will be talking about that in Washington, but it's undeniable, is it not, that the Windsor Framework has opened the doors of the Oval Office to the Prime Minister so that they will be having that meeting with President Biden today?
Well, I think what it is that the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is priority in Biden's mind, but he did reluctantly pat Rishi Sunak on the back, saying that it was good that he achieved this Windsor Agreement. He hasn't been really effusive about it, and I think that there is that impression that he has a preference over his Irish roots than his any alignment to Britain. But can I also make a comment about this special relationship? You know, I spent 7 years as the worldwide vice president of Republicans overseas. And so I was always asked about this special relationship. It came about not really between Churchill and Roosevelt. It came about because their heads of their military had very close relationship and forged the relationship between the two. Obama, he had a close relationship with Merkel. He didn't care about a special relationship. But I think what we share in common and that keeps us as strong allies is that both countries want to protect their people and we want economic growth. And what more, as long as we're aligned, then that makes the special relationship work.
Doctor, the Prime Minister is looking for trade agreements. What's he likely to get? And also there's this concern about artificial intelligence and where the centre and maybe a regulatory body for that, where it should be based. And he would say, let's base it in London.
Well, which it should, I would prefer if it was. But back to your first question, I think that Rishi Sunak, where they're going to be aligned is both support in increasing any kind of assistance with the Ukraine. I think that where they're going to have a bit of a disagreement is on, Biden calls it the climate crisis, and Rishi Sunak looks at it as green technology. But my biggest concern is the regulation of AI and why Biden on September 12th, 2022, wrote an executive order. I want to read one short paragraph because the media, conservative media, regular media, no one's really covered this, and it's very serious. So it's called Advancing Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Innovation for a Sustainable, Safe, and Secure American Bioeconomy. You know, it's all those fancy things. But it gets down to Biden's September 12, 2022 executive order declares that Americans must surrender all human rights that stand in the way of transhumanism. Clinical trial safety standards and informed consent will be eradicated as they stand in the way of universally unleashing gene editing technologies needed to merge humans with AI. In order to achieve the societal goals of the New World Order, crimes against humanity are not only legal but mandatory. That is probably the most important thing, and why Rishi Sunak should push for the control, the global leadership of AI should be on our shores over here, not U.S. shores, but UK shores.
The question is whether
the letter that just came out on Tuesday from those experts of AI. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback.
No, I was just going to say there'll be a bit of competition, I think, won't there, to try and be the hosts of any global summit on AI and its regulation. It might have been Rishi Sunak's idea, but I think it's the hot topic at the moment, isn't it?
Right. Well, Eamonn, you also asked me about trade. I thought trade was off the table, but I think Rishi Sunak, even though he philosophically does not agree with the Inflation Reduction Act because of government involvement, he's been very, very smart to think about how he could ask for no taxes for imports of UK electric vehicles. And that, I thought that is a really, really good strategy. Now, when in my previous role, I took quite a few of the trade representatives from the UK to actually meet the governors and the congressional people to forge investments and trade agreements. It's not going to happen on a federal level or with Biden's approval, but there are ways to work around that. And there are the fact that he met with the congressional representatives, the Senate and the House the day before was actually a very smart move, because if he can get them on side and they can open the doors to the governors and their teams, then there is going to be something that'll happen that'll benefit the UK.
We have to leave it there. Dr. Jan Harper-Hayes, always good to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Transhumanism.
I know.
Thought I'd heard it all.
I know, yeah. That was the most frightening thing I think I've ever heard in broadcasting
like
years.
Moving from being human to a robot?
From what she was describing, it was the use of gene editing to combine software with human tissues and, I don't know, I'm no expert, but it sounded like sci-fi.
There will be a film about it.
On the agenda in Washington will also, of course, be Ukraine and lots of discussion and focus over the last few days on one of the world's biggest dams having been, what's the word I'm looking for?
Breached.
Breached, indeed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the situation in that occupied part of the Kherson region is catastrophic, as occupiers are now abandoning people in dreadful conditions.
Now, he's called for international aid organisations to help with rescues as thousands of Ukrainians remain cut off. Let's speak to Ukrainian MP and leader of the Holles Party, Kira Rudik. Kira, as each day we hope the water has reached its height now. Goodness knows what will happen when it begins to settle down and we see further destruction with all of this. What's your assessment of the dam breach?
Hello, good morning, Eamonn, Isabel. Thank you so much for having me. Well, indeed, this catastrophe is both humanitarian and ecological. And as of right now, we know that around 80 villages or settlements are in danger and are either flood, but also in danger of being flooded. We right now, thousands of Ukrainians going to the south to help out people and animals just to make sure that we rescue and fight for every life. We understand that the circumstances when it happened are absolutely tragic. We state that Russians blew up the dam and endangering not only Ukraine but the whole Europe, because the consequences of that would be terrifying on first of all on ecological level. So first of all, look at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear station that is right now does not have the water to cool down because they were taking the water from the river, from the water from the dam. A second threat that is that mines that were in the ground at the battlefield and near it, right now they're in the water and they can migrate whenever the water would go, and it will be the Black Sea. So the impact on Ukrainian people is absolutely dramatic, and we see people who lost their homes, who were spending the last 2 days on the roofs waiting for the help to arrive. And though we are certain, and from our side, we are doing everything possible. So our emergency services, our volunteers, our military, they are helping people that are on our controlled territory. But what we see, the videos that you see, they are sometimes also from the occupied territories, where we know that people are not getting enough help. So what bothers me a lot is that international organizations such as Greenpeace or Red Cross, they are not there. They are not at the occupied territories trying to rescue our people, trying to help them out. And we know that they are not getting help from Russians. And at this goal to fight for every life and rescue people, first of all, I think we are not, as the society, doing everything that is possible for the people at the occupied territories.
I just wonder if you can tell us any more. I was reading that the Ukrainians have been warning that they believe the Russians may well be planning to bomb the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. Can you tell us any more about the intelligence behind that claim?
So first of all, the threat at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear station, it did not happen like yesterday or last week. It has been since Russia started to control nuclear station, and they have been threatening with the incident for the last year. And we are one step away from a catastrophe, because it may not be an incident, it may not be a bombarding, it could be a mistake, because they are controlling the station with lots of military. We know that they moved their explosives, and so just a disaster could happen at any time. Especially right now, the risks are extremely high because the station, as I said, does not have enough water to cool down the reactors. You know, any person in their sane mind would not be ever playing or endangering a nuclear station, because we all know what may happen. We have gone through Chernobyl. We know the impact that it has on people in generation. And I can tell you one thing. Radiation does not care which passport you are holding, and are you a member of NATO or EU or not. So if there is a tragedy, it will be everybody's problem, and it will endanger people throughout the Europe. And this is why we are calling for the UN forces or the international organizations to put the spectators there to control the nuclear station. But as of now, it did not happen. Russia does not allow that, and we are still living under this ticking time bomb.
Well, thank you for that update, Kira Reddick, and just unbelievable that we are talking about this, you know, over a year into this terrible war, that the people, citizens of Ukraine, are having to suffer such terrible circumstances. Thank you for talking to us.
Well, wherever you are, wherever you're waking up, or maybe you're going to bed, the time is 6:24 on this Thursday morning. A local community is currently in a legal battle to stop drilling for oil in the Surrey countryside. This is in the village of Dunsfold, made famous by Top Gear, where UK Oil and Gas want to undertake drilling over a 3-year period. They say any environmental harm will only be temporary. However, campaigners disagree. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins has been speaking to the residents to find out more.
I'm meeting Protect Dunsfold, a local group formed in 2019 to fight drilling by UKOG, that's UK Oil and Gas.
Talk us through, very simply, what are the two main legal challenges in this judicial review?
One of them is about the impact of the AMB. The area of outstanding national beauty at the moment finishes on the road down there under the bottom of Hascombe Hill, but there is a plan to extend it which will include the whole of Dunsfold, and one of the claims is they didn't take account of it properly.
The other reason is that on the same day the government said yes to drilling in Dunsfold, it said no to drilling in Ellesmere Port, citing emissions as a reason.
This is inconsistent decision making, which is something that's not allowed.
Together with Waverley Borough Council and backed by the Good Law Project, they're seeking a judicial review of the government's decision to allow exploratory drilling near Dunsfold.
It's been going on for some time, isn't it?
It's been going on for 4.5 years now, since February 2019. So we've managed to keep UKOG out of that field.
And this is where the drilling would happen. In this field, there'd be an access road built through this field with the sheep. It would run through here, and then this is where the drilling would take place. In the early 1980s, oil and gas deposits were thought to be beneath these hills, but it wasn't thought commercially viable to try and extract it. UK Oil and Gas think that's now changed. They reckon there could be up to 30 to 40 billion cubic feet of gas beneath our feet, worth £124 million. And they want to take 3 years exploring the ground beneath us to try and find it.
How do they justify such a small project as this being allowed to take place in this beautiful environment? Its output, by their own reckoning, is going to be very small in terms of barrels of oil or gas.
UKOG declined to comment on an ongoing legal case. So we spoke to UK Onshore Oil and Gas, who are the industry body.
In terms of energy density, the amount of energy you get per square kilometre from oil and gas is orders of magnitude greater than it would be from wind and solar.
Do you understand why they would fight this?
Look,
because if it was in your village, they were going to make these huge changes to the village, which there seemingly there would be, with extra traffic, tearing up the landscape. Even if it's for a short period, which I know you claim.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's not a claim, it's a fact. Like, there have been 2,100 onshore oil and gas wells drilled in the UK. Okay? Look around the country, you don't tend to see them. They're really well hidden. And once the resource has been depleted, the land is returned to its former use, typically agriculture. So it is a temporary use of the land. Exactly a year ago today, the government rejected a gas site in the north of England on climate change grounds. And
this is Ellesmere Port.
That's correct. And approved one in the south of England. It is absolutely up to government to explain that inconsistency, because we criticised it at the time. We said both sites should have been approved.
If you lose the judicial review, what happens next? You're not giving up?
No, the fight goes on, and we'd have to explore whatever paths were legally possible. It's not going to be an easy route for UKOG to follow, even if they win this appeal.
Residents of this quintessentially English village are determined to keep their part of the world forever green and pleasant. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Beautiful part of the world, absolutely beautiful part of the world, and looks gorgeous, especially at this time of year, doesn't it? Sort of green and pleasant land.
But we've got an energy crisis and hard decisions need to be made. And, I think if you're in government, then you've got to make those decisions. You've got to have a policy, rightly or wrongly, and hopefully you can get people to go with you in the direction that you want to go. So how do we get our energy here and now and at the right prices and out of Putin's hands? So much of this is not so much what we do about the future, it's what was agreed to in the past. And you just think, why? Why did a coalition government decide we're not storing gas? Why did they say, why did Angela Merkel in Germany say, here's a really good idea. Let's give all the control over Europe's gas to Russia. That's a fantastic idea.
Well, I suppose they thought, post-Cold War, new relations. She was keen to try and calm things down with Russia, but that has massively backfired. And part of the downside of the beautiful weather that we saw in Paul's report there and the wonderful green in Pleasantland is hay fever. And sufferers are being warned to stock up on their medicine cabinet at the moment because a pollen bomb is set to hit the UK this weekend. We don't suffer from it, but you're saying all your brothers do.
Yeah, yeah.
You're very lucky that you haven't been afflicted.
Very blessed, and if you do suffer from it...
awful.
Just awful, thinking of you. This warm weather is expected to worsen the whole pollen bomb situation, with areas such as the south of England, the Midlands, Wales being at very high risk.
Well, Dr. Ellie Cannon's here to share her top tips to help those in need. Always lovely to see you, Ellie. It's been too long since I've seen you. But gosh, it's this perennial problem. We might not have seen you for a while, but pollen lives on, hay fever carries on. So what's your top tips for this weekend?
Well, as you said, we are going to have this pollen bomb. So what that means is that all the tree and grass pollen with this lovely weather is all coming at the same time. So as you said, people need to be really ready with their medication. It's probably a good idea to start now. Sometimes people start too late after they've already started their symptoms. Unfortunately, staying inside is a way to protect yourself from hay fever and also other allergens that are around, like dust and house mites. Keeping windows shut. This is so miserable, isn't it, for hay fever and sunny weather? But keeping windows and doors shut, and also things like cleaning and purifying the air actually makes a real difference, because all that pollen stays trapped on our clothes, even on our shoes. Dust in the house, all of those things contribute to allergy.
Where do you stand on lubricants? Things like Vaseline or, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of people that grease the inside of their nose with that. Does it do any good?
Yeah, so a lot of these physical ideas, rather than chemical or drug ideas, are actually really worth doing in combination with your medication. So absolutely, Vaseline around the nose, it traps the pollen, it stops the pollen going up your nose and irritating you. Things like air purifiers are a really good idea, again, because it's trapping those physical pieces of pollen, not hanging your washing outside, because then the pollen sticks to all your laundry. So yeah, the physical things, wearing wraparound sunglasses. I know some of the high street stores now sell hay fever wipes, so you can make sure that the pollen is sort of wiped away from near your eyes and your nose. So those sort of physical ideas, or barrier ideas, if you like, are actually really good alongside your medication.
But I was saying there and being very thankful that I don't suffer from hay fever, but that can change at any time, as I understand it. That you can become susceptible.
Yeah, it does seem to have changed, actually. Yeah, it does seem to have changed over the last few years, and certainly in practice, particularly sort of during in the first summer after COVID, we had people saying to us, I didn't used to have hay fever, but I do now. And I think that's to do with how the pollen is carried and changes in sort of pollution and what we call particulate pollution. There's definitely changes, and people do change. Women often find there's a difference in their immune system after they've had a baby, and that can sort of change things. So yeah, some people do start to suffer and some don't. You said your brothers have it. Obviously there's a familial tendency there, and so there might be sort of years where you do get it when it's particularly bad.
And how do I know? Because I don't think I've got it, but I would say I've probably had a runny nose for a couple of months now, but I assume that's just because I'm run down. But then I'm suddenly thinking maybe it's hay fever. I've forever got a runny nose.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it could be hay fever, or it could be a sort of dust allergy within the house, which is also really common. I mean, 23% of people in the UK are allergic to tree and grass pollen. So, that's quite
really
high already. Yeah. So there's a quite high likelihood. So I would, if you wanted to test whether or not your runny nose is from hay fever, what I would do is I would take an antihistamine for 1 or 2 weeks. Don't take it in the morning because it might make it difficult for you to do your job, but take it before you go to bed, because obviously antihistamines can make people drowsy. And if the antihistamine is working, then there's your answer. Antihistamines are really well-tolerated, safe medications. We prescribe them to little children, to old people. We find that they are very safe for our patients. So it's perfectly reasonable to try it to see if it helps you.
Good advice, Doctor. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Ellie Cannon there on what to do to protect yourself in this hay fever, this grass hay fever situation. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks so much. I honestly, Isabel, I don't mind your runny nose at all.
I think it's the aircon in here, actually. I'm already freezing.
You are freezing.
I'm absolutely frozen.
That's really scary. Are you dead?
I might be dead, yeah. You know what they say?
What?
Cold hands, warm heart. Just,
But I don't mind the runny nose. It's just when you wipe it with your hand and then you wipe it on your dress or something like that. You should use a handkerchief. You should.
You're cheeky. He's so cheeky. Who else is cheeky? Boris Johnson, it appears. There's yet another Pippa Crerar exclusive. She's found out that he had another guest, possibly breaking lockdown rules, to Chequers. This time it was a wedding planner. I think she's got a name like Dixie Malone. We'll have all the details in the papers next with Claire Muldoon and Freddie Gray.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
OK, joining us to go through the papers is Claire Muldoon, and alongside her, Freddie Gray, who's the deputy editor of The Spectator. So, Freddie, honours lists we're going to talk about, and this is front page of The Times. What's happening?
Well, the headline is Sunak ready to approve Johnson's honours list. And this is a bit of a change because it had been thought that Rishi Sunak was going to try and block Boris Johnson's honours list. And in fact, he wants to clear the decks and let him have it because the two have been squabbling over it. And what this means, the upshot is that, well, the immediate upshot probably will be that Nadine Dorries and Alok Sharma will be elevated as peers, and therefore they will stop being MPs, and there will be a by-election. I think Alok Sharma's seat of Reading West will probably go to Labour. Nadine Dorries's may be tight, but it'll probably be a Conservative hold. And I think, yes, Boris was sort of using this possibly as a tactic against Rishi Sunak. And the story today is suggesting that Sunak's saying, OK, fine, you have it.
So why? Why? What's in it for him if it's going to lead to a by-election? It's just going to appease a wing of a fractured party.
I think, I mean, it's quite a thing to stop a Prime Minister. Tradition says that the Prime Minister can name people he wants to give honours to, and I think he's just carrying on with it, and he's sort of calling Boris's bluff a little bit.
And Liz Truss, does she get in an honours list?
That's what I was just about to ask. Yeah.
She is, I believe. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen with it, but every Prime Minister is meant to get one. So.
How many's on Boris's list, roughly? Do you know? I'm sorry, it's a tough question.
We don't know.
Is his dad still on it?
I think his dad got removed.
He got removed.
Did
Various
he?
other people have been removed. I mean, I think it's an ongoing thing. I mean, Michael Gove was on there, but he got removed because Boris decided
Yes.
he was a bad thing.
But that was purely political. It's such a cesspit, isn't it?
Well, it's all political, yeah.
Yeah, it's horrid, really.
It's called an honour, but actually it's, it's not that honourable.
Well, unless
process.
they get, unless we actually, as the public, get to grips with what's happened with the VIP lane in the House of Lords that Michelle Mone took for the PPI stuff, the PPE stuff, etc. I don't think people will have any confidence in the elevated House of Lords at the moment anyway. It's quite divisive, I think.
Well, also,
should it be scrapped?
The same week we've had Sunak saying he's going to bypass the Lords
Yes.
just to deal with, to get his immigration bill through, which, I think the public would probably not have a problem with, but it kind of begs the question, what's the point?
What's the point of them?
House?
It's a very good question. I mean, I think a lot of people think it should be scrapped or completely reformed. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, so I think keep it. I like any kind of check.
I agree.
Any kind of check on any kind of power is good.
Would you take a peerage, Freddie? Lord Grey? Yeah, you would.
Say yes,
your initial,
actually.
but you were going to, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it would never happen. So I can't
Lord
really
Grey.
Eamonn.
Have none of you got an honour? Have none of you...
Oh, only you
Am I
have.
the only one?
You're the only one.
It's embarrassing. Meanwhile, let's talk about your mate Bugsy Malone.
My mate?
The Boris Johnson...
Oh, yeah, Dixie Malone.
Dixie Malone.
Dixie Malone, yeah. So she got invited, allegedly, to Chequers, according to Pippa Crerar, who's obviously made her name with the Mirror, with all of the Partygate stuff, and she's now political editor of The Guardian. Claire, what is the revelation? What's Dixie Malone been up to?
I don't even think this is worthy of a headline, but it is The Guardian. That's why it's there, I think. They're just stirring more and more and more of what happened during COVID times when Boris and Carrie were at Chequers. The allegation is they had a friend over for the evening under the guise of childcare and planning the wedding that was happening 3 weeks later, whilst Carrie, I don't know if she was pregnant at the time with Romy, I don't know. Anyway, so the allegation is that there was an unlawful overnight stay at Chequers, and the Guardian have dredged this up. Now, I think everybody has now understood the fact that it was alleged and then proven that Boris had parties, Partygate, Cakegate, and then there was the actual, what constitutes a party? Do we actually care at this point? The Conservatives now are actually taking a legal action against the form and against the inquiry that they want, that they set up. It just seems to be an unravelling of a narrative that really has to be put back in a box. Look at Sweden. Sweden have completely and utterly finished their inquiry. Why haven't we? Why is ours still ongoing? Why is The Guardian making this front page? What good is it doing?
Do you not think it's important to have a COVID inquiry then? To look at the lessons to be learned and what decisions were made under pressure?
I do.
And do you not think it matters then if the Prime Minister was breaking rules in this particular instance?
But he would say he wasn't breaking the rules in this instance, and it's a very, very grey area, actually, in terms of interpretation.
What does Dixie Malone do? What is she?
Well, she's a wedding planner.
Oh.
But, I mean, I suppose, if nothing else, it prompts the debate about how crazy the rules were. And that must be an element of an inquiry to say, should we ever have such draconian rules again? Here's the question.
Well, I think if you look at the history of pandemics or, great diseases, societies don't want to dwell on them. They always want to move on. But Pippa Crerar and The Guardian will not let us move on. I mean, we all know that Boris Johnson did not obey the rules that his government put on us. We all know that that's hypocritical, but we're all bored to death
of
hearing about the movements of various people at Chequers over this period of time.
But she's not talking about Starmer when he was in Newcastle or wherever he was having pizza and beer.
It always has it. Obviously, when The Guardian do it, it has an agenda. And obviously, it is a story. But, I mean, how many times can we talk about... I'm no fan of Carrie Symonds. I think she's awful. But I don't care about whether she had people over to plan her wedding And it was a breach of lockdown rules that shouldn't have been in place
But do you
anyway.
accept that it does prompt the debate about were the rules in themselves silly? And if we had another pandemic, should we, use the same kind
Never, ever do it again?
Yeah.
But it was
The
obviously
reality
a
is, though,
disastrous
they have got the legislation in place and they can shut us down at any time they want because that's already written. That's already been done. And the thing I think which is highlighting about the rules during pandemic time and COVID times is that they can tease and they're open to interpretation. Whose idea of a party is my idea of a party is someone else's idea of a party. You will always have the teasing. You will always have the discrepancies.
Yeah.
Sorry, stolen this.
Do you know, let's talk about Prince Harry here, Freddie. So this was day 2 for him yesterday.
Yes.
Observers are saying he seemed more robust, more confident about this. We're not going to hear for a long while as to what the judge made of his testimony. But what do you think?
Well, I know that the line is that he had a much better day yesterday than he did. But I'm not sure he really did. I mean, I think he's not very bright. He's not very good at answering questions. He doesn't seem to be aware of the evidence that he himself has submitted. My favourite moment yesterday was that he has this line that he likes to say where there's a difference between the public interest and what interests the public. And he loves it. He thinks it's a very clever thing to say. And the barrister said to him, well, then what is a story that would be in the public interest? And he couldn't think of one. He just said, I don't know. And then he paused and he said, a life-threatening injury, perhaps. And I think it's telling that the only thing that he thinks might be of genuine public interest is if he has a life-threatening injury or a member of the royal family has a life-threatening injury. It's a very, very odd story. I think what I found extraordinary is what sort of a law firm would let their client go on the stand knowing that the witness statement he'd submitted was really just a sort of splurge of information that he himself wasn't across, and that he would be embarrassed.
But Harry said yesterday that he met his KC in the south of France and had no thought of actually taking this case to court until he had that discussion. And what time frame is this covering, Freddie?
What, you mean the Mirror stuff?
Yeah, from the allegations.
It's
historic,
It's a school
Eton
stuff.
days, yeah.
All historic, nothing now post when he met Meghan or anything, because...
Well, there is no phone hacking allegation post-2011.
Right, OK.
Leveson, yeah.
I actually felt sorry for him.
I feel sorry for him because I think he's mad.
I mean, no, I think I had no sympathy during the Spare stuff. I thought he came across as spoilt, entitled, and he was hypocritical because he was doing exactly what he'd complained the press was doing by talking about private matters of the family. But hearing him in court talking about the endless intrusions, whether or not the Mirror was responsible, I don't think he can prove, and I suspect he'll probably lose the case. But it clearly happened. I mean, the fact that there were trackers on cars, details about his thumb being broken when he was at school, whether it was the Mirror or not, and I think that's an awful thing to grow up with, and the paranoia, the impact on relationships, the loss of your mother in terrible circumstances. I actually came away going, crikey, this is awful.
Well, and the cruelest part, which he sometimes acknowledges, is that often it wasn't the press hacking, it was the palace
security services.
Which was also, and people within his circle, waiters at Bougie or whoever it was, he doesn't want to hear that. But again, I think it's all rather tragic.
But some things he's upset about, and I want to understand. Other ones, like the fact that he became a parade commander at Eton, a 3-line story in the Daily Mirror about that. He said that caused him great distress. I mean, did it?
Well, because then you could start questioning who's gossiping, who can you trust, who's your friend? Is it your housemaster? Is it your roommate? Is it your,
No, I have no doubt that it must be very difficult to grow up in the public eye like that. There's absolutely no denying that.
He's not the first, though, and he's not the only one.
Yeah.
There's plenty of celebrities that are doing it as well, are in the public eye, and the public feel it's their interest, and the newspapers feel it's their interest to know what is happening in people's lives. I don't particularly think that's a nice way to earn a living, to go for the story, and I don't think it's nice for the celebrity itself unless they're doing something completely unlawful and they're living an absolute lie.
OK. All right. Well, thanks. The guy's going to be back in 40 minutes' time with more of the stories that are making the papers today.
We are.
Now, the United Kingdom will be hotter than Ibiza, Barcelona and Rome this weekend as the temperature will will soar to 27 degrees Celsius.
So no need to travel overseas then. Instead, you can enjoy the sunshine on your doorstep, and we can speak to the travel editor at The Sun, Lisa Minot. Now, good morning to you, Lisa. It's all about staycations then. Where will be the best place to visit this weekend in the UK?
Morning. Well, it seems pretty much everywhere is going to get some really quite nice hot sunshine at some point over the weekend, right up from the tip of Scotland all the way down to the south of the country. So, I mean, I think there's going to be an opportunity for us to get out and about and really, sort of enjoy that sunshine wherever we are.
Lisa, the whole of the UK, the whole of the British Isles, we're going to see it in a way that we've never seen it before. So, as Isabel was referring to there, everywhere is going to look not only good, but different as well. So what about places? I mean, for instance, and I'm going to ask our panel here at the table, in Northern Ireland, we have a road called the Coast Road, which runs from Belfast along the north coast to Portrush, and it absolutely is one of the best coast roads in the world. But perhaps you need the sunshine. So that would be my recommendation this weekend.
Oh, my recommendation, because I'm in my back garden with the kids, actually some of them are back home, I think it was just to sit in a garden with friends and family and just enjoy.
I get that. I totally get that. Isabel?
Oh, not in my garden. It's like it's a courtyard, so if there's a high temperature, it's about 5 degrees hotter and it's airless, so definitely not in my garden. If I could go anywhere in the UK this weekend, Salcombe in Devon. Beautiful beaches, always gorgeous there.
Ready?
Isle of Wight.
Isle of Wight.
Oh,
I love it.
Are you going this weekend?
Not this weekend.
You ought to. Look at the forecast.
I would love to go this weekend, but sadly I can't. I actually go to Scotland this weekend.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
But,
where are you going to in Scotland? I was there last week.
St Andrews.
Oh, lovely.
Very nice. The Isle of Wight, the ferry is...
It's terrible service.
Yes.
That's really, having plugged it, I should warn people that it's very expensive and not very reliable.
The ferry is more expensive than the big one.
If you make it...
Yes,
to the island.
At least you've got one that's working, unlike the Calmac up in Scotland.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So, Lisa, there we're just whet people's appetites with our suggestions there. Where are your must-go-to places or places that people will think they'll be pleasantly surprised?
I think if you're looking for something a little bit different, I have got some suggestions. Of course, we can all go to the likes of Blackpool, Margate and Brighton. All of them going to be very popular. If you're trying to get a little bit away from everyone else this weekend, there are some other places I would suggest. Galston in Norfolk. Galston, I say it's a beautiful place to go with the kids. Got lots of different activities for the children. Beautiful, bright beach huts on the beach. And I think that's a great tip for somewhere that's just not quite so busy. As well as that, a bit different again, Gaddings Dam in Todnorton in Yorkshire. It's known as Cow Beach. It's actually a reservoir, a Victorian reservoir, but you can sit and sunbathe there across beautiful beach, and the cows take a swim into the water occasionally, so you can maybe enjoy that, and it's known as one of the best wild swimming spots in the country. Other than that, Mersey Island in Essex, another great place to go. If you're wanting something a bit different, you can only access it at high tide across a causeway, but again, some beautiful views there from the coast as well, and it's a little bit exclusive. Lots of celebs like it there. Lots of them have been living there as well. So another place I would say if you're wanting to maybe spot a celebrity. And other than that, Isle of Man, another place I think that you can really go and find some fantastic different views. Again, you are going to have to take a ferry to get there, but there is a decent ferry service. And actually, what you would be looking out for there are the wild wallabies. There were some wallabies that were basically brought over there for a zoo, escaped, and now there's a population of up to 500 wild wallabies out in the countryside. So again, another tip for somewhere a bit different.
I used to go to Mersey Island as a child. I had no idea it was a celebrity haunt. We used to go for the regatta every August, and there were bands playing in the street, and my parents in those days, we were allowed to roam the streets, and it was the highlight of the year. It was absolutely beautiful. They've got stunning, as you say, a sort of tidal causeway, and I really recommend that. I think we should get people to email in with their suggestions of where they're going to go this weekend. Where do you fancy at home? What have you got planned for this weekend? What's your best weather hotspot in the UK? That would be a bit of fun.
The thing that frustrates me, people think about it's a good weekend for a picnic. Flies and wasps.
Yes.
If you ever, it all seems idyllic, but eating outdoors can be precarious.
It can be, yes. And right now in Scotland, as I think your panellists would tell you, the midges can be a little bit of a problem as well if you're out and about somewhere, sort of in this, out in the sort of like wilds of nature. It isn't a problem, but I think as long as you sort of plan correctly, and who says that a picnic does have to involve, sort of lots of food, maybe just packing up one item and taking that with you and a drink and heading off without all of the palaver of a whole picnic. You can still enjoy yourself out there, I'm sure.
Some strawberries and some bubbly, that'll do.
Yeah.
Lisa Minot, thank you. You've got us really excited for the weekend. Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your
tips. It reminds me,
well.
I was in my physical prime when I looked really well. In the summer of 1976, the hottest summer
We
on
need to
record.
see evidence of this, please.
I was gorgeous.
What's your no past tense, please?
Basically, I remember that was the summer for putting a blanket on the ground,
Yeah.
Who sang that song? I took the blanket from the bedroom and we'd go walking hand in hand.
Someone help me.
Put the blanket on paving stones and it
Who
hurts.
sang Blanket on the Ground?
Don't look at me. I was 4 in 1976.
Put the blanket on. Let us know, viewers and listeners.
Certainly couldn't use Shazam for that rendition anyway.
Do send us, though, your top tips. What will you be picnicking with or eating or consuming, and where will you be going in the heatwave this weekend? GB Views at gbnews.com, and we'll have more on Rishi Sunak stateside after this.
Morning, Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Changes are on the way, but today is more of the same. A bit drab for most of us out there this morning, but we will again see the sunshine coming through. But the area of high pressure we've seen over recent days is just starting to shift, and this low down to the southwest is starting to encroach. The isobars squeezing together. It's made for a windy night in the southwest and a blustery day here during the day today. The cloud has come back in overnight and most of us are starting a bit grey again. The eastern side of England and the northern half of Scotland may well stay pretty drab. But elsewhere, notice the cloud melting away from late morning onwards to reveal quite a bit of sunshine. Still that cool breeze, though, on the east coast. Even if it does turn sunny here, temperatures pegged back. The highest temperatures further west, and particularly in the southwest, where the humidity will be starting to rise. The sunshine turning hazy through this afternoon as we start to see more of a change. This is rain. Haven't seen much of that recently, in the form of showers coming towards the southwest through the night and during Friday. Elsewhere, it's going to be another dry night and the cloud starts to just push back inland on that easterly breeze. Temperatures mostly 9 to 10 Celsius, so coolish, but it will be a mild night, a warm night in the southwest, getting quite humid here with still quite brisk winds. And it's in the southwest where we're going to have the showers tomorrow. Hit and miss, not everywhere seeing one, but there could be 1 or 2 heavy ones. For much of the UK, it's another cracking day. Tomorrow again starting grey. Again, that east coast susceptible to the mist sticking around, and it will be cooler here as well, but a better chance, certainly a little inland, of seeing some sunshine. And again, it'll be in the west where we have those top temperatures. On the south coast, 26 degrees Celsius is possible. It turns hotter as we go through the weekend. The humidity rises as well, so the nights will be getting warmer, an increasing chance of seeing showers and even some thunderstorms this weekend.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello.
Very good morning to you. Hello.
And good morning to you.
Good morning
Very
to
nice
you.
to see you there. I'm just looking, you're very dotty today.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that dress that Julia Roberts wore in Pretty Woman.
Oh, thanks. I'll take
That's
that.
another song. Do, 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 do.
I'm keeping a tally. That's 2 songs so far this morning.
Oh, Billy
Viewers
Joe
at home
Spears.
love it. Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Joe Spears, thanks for telling me, folks, sang Blanket on the Ground.
There you go.
I'll
That
take
old
the
cracker.
blanket from the bedroom and we'll go walking hand in hand.
Did Elvis do a rendition as well?
Down the river. Put the blanket on the ground. Your life must be very dull.
No, just different music tastes.
Yes. So does Beyonce sing anything like that? Or
No. That's 3.
okay.
We're going to go to our top story now. Rishi Sunak. I can't think of any songs to accompany this.
What do you think he listens to music-wise?
Well, he reads Jilly Cooper, so there's no accounting for taste. But anyway, our Prime Minister has announced that he wants the UK to host the first global summit on AI safety in the autumn here in London.
OK, so he's meeting up with President Joe Biden later today about the potential risk to emerging technology, and they'll also discuss further support for Ukraine, energy security and the climate crisis.
Well, let's speak to Ben Habib, who joins us in the studio this morning, the
a
former
lot to get
Brexit
through.
Party MEP and now member and advisor of the Reform Party, giving you your full title there. Look, you know, first visit to the White House for Prime Minister Sunak. We know that he's a big fan of the States. He's obviously thinks he can.
They say he's going to retire out there.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So
He's got a house in
if he
Santa
loses
Monica.
the next, he's looking for another one.
He's not there to renew his green card, is he? Is that what he's doing? Is that part of the plan?
That could be an idea, couldn't it? Do you get
Not
a
if he
green
wants re-election here first, chaps. But staying serious for just a minute, you know, if he wants to really lead, and I get the sense that he sees this AI watchdog as a sort of legacy opportunity for him if he can persuade global leaders to host it here in the UK. What are the chances that we can do that? Because everyone
why is it important that we should be the centre of AI technology and we be the referees involved in all of this laying down the roads? Why is that important?
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that AI, which I don't know how you feel about AI, but for me, it's
frightened about it.
Are you? Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's emerged out of nowhere. You know, last year no one was talking about AI. Then we had ChatGPT, and that was kind of, it can write your essay for you. And now it's threatening mankind. And it's gone, you know, from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds flat, and we're worried about the regulatory aspects of it. Regulation, of course, is very important, because if you control the regulation, then you can shape the way the industry develops, and you can control the industry. So I think there is no doubt an intellectual land grab going on, a bit like with the climate crisis, as President Biden calls it, and we call it sort of green new technologies. But it's very hard for the UK, I think, to punch at the same level as the US when it comes to these new kinds of technologies. And take the climate crisis, for example. It's a really good example. The US enters its drive to net zero as the biggest producer of oil and the biggest producer of gas in the world, completely independent. So when it wants to go green and develop new technologies, it's doing it from a position of super strength. And you know, we've just seen this Inflation Reduction Act, which is a $370 billion program for supporting new technologies, infrastructure and so on in the US for US firms, quite protectionist. The UK can't even begin to follow there. Our approach to net zero is coming from energy dependence, because we were shutting down the North Sea, and desperately trying to catch up. And I think with AI, what Rishi's doing is trying to sort of stamp UK credentials in the ground. And I don't know if you saw in the papers this morning, apparently AI contributes £3.7 billion a year to the UK's GDP. Where did that come from? I mean, AI didn't really exist, as we were saying last year.
I suppose we don't. But the versions that's already contributing to our economy, I presume, is you know, a version of AI is when you go onto your bank, for example, and you blink to check that it's you. These are the kind of day-to-day uses of it. But my understanding is there's 2 types of AI. Those kinds that are progress, that help businesses cut costs, but you know, still make great profits. And then there's the AI that actually is spiralling out of control, and it's the people who have invented it that are sounding the alarms, from Elon Musk to the boss of GCHQ, who are saying, right, we've got 2 years to get a grip of this. And what I think would be great from Rishi Sunak is if he can harness that earning potential of it and also at the same time make sure it remains safe.
OK. But why then should Sleepy Joe say, "You're right, Rishi"?
Well, this is my point. Yeah, why would he hand it to us?
Why, if it's all so good, and you've painted a very good picture of how important it is to the economy, why would Sleepy Joe say...
Well, he won't, will he?
That's the answer to that.
He won't. I mean, the US are fantastic at holding on to this kind of technology. You know, Silicon Valley is something that no other part of the world has been able to replicate. We've got a good fintech sector in the United Kingdom. It doesn't go anywhere near Silicon Valley. I know they've had the slightly ignominious collapse of SVB Bank, you know, which is Silicon Valley Bank, which wasn't great for them. But no, I think the US is a powerhouse. Rishi wants to get in on the act. Good for him for trying. You've got to try and get in there. If you can control the regulation, you control the direction of travel for the industry.
But what's he going to emerge with? We had a whole list of things that he's there to talk about. So if they're going, no, I forget that, Northern Ireland, forget that, you're not going to get... So what is he... What could he leave with to save face?
It's a really good question. You know, we talked about the unrequited love of the special relationship, and we do stand shoulder to shoulder with the US when it comes to Ukraine.
Rishi's very tiny.
He is very tiny.
His shoulder would only be at Biden's belly button, really, wouldn't it? But it would.
Honestly, not this again. He's standing next to Macron, Boris Johnson. I can't remember. There was a whole list of them the other day. They're all that size.
Well,
I don't know why you pick on Rishi on this one. But I have a question. And again,
but he walked up yesterday to Heathrow the day before, and he was walking up all these steps, and his trousers were so tight and short.
That's what bothers
and
you
he's got to get
more.
longer trousers. I mean, come on.
Yes, the trousers went up to basically his knees. Every time he went up a new step, the trousers shot up to about his knee. It's very... I mean, I don't like how they dress him.
Sack the stylist. No. That's your advice.
That would be
okay, well, this is
I'm completely with you. For all that money, his suits should be far better than they are.
But look at this. Can we just take a moment? Yesterday, or overnight, most people will be seeing these pictures for the first time this morning.
But the jacket's too big, Isabel.
But it doesn't matter. Look, he's getting in there. He loves America so much. He went to university there, didn't he? My question is, and people who are on social media who follow him will notice he has upped his game. And when people talked before he became Prime Minister about him being a slick operator, but his social media posts, the plane out there, it looked like a scene from Top Gun. Well, I did ask the team to get them this morning. I don't know if we can play some of his Instagram videos. If we haven't got them, take a look at his Instagram this morning. And in fact, I've reposted a couple of them on my Instagram. His flight over there, it looked like a scene from Top Gun. I kid you not. And there you go. That's some of it here now. Look at this. And then overnight, the pictures of him out on the baseball pitch. My question is that going to resonate with voters here in the UK? Is this going to make him cooler at home? Or, as Eamonn hinted, could it actually be helping him reinvent himself stateside as and when, if and when, this all goes wrong?
Horribly wrong in the UK in the autumn 2024.
Could it be both? I mean, could it help him with an election and could it help him say so? My point is, he's upped his game. It's very slick, and it's got to do something positive for him.
Well, I mean, there can be no doubt in President Biden's mind that in Rishi Sunak he has a strong ally. You know, that is utterly clear in everything that Rishi Sunak has done. So if that's
not
part of the aim.
Not to be scoffed at, then, yeah.
And, you know, if that's part of the aim, that's that he's succeeding there. As far as Ukraine is concerned, you know, it does worry me, though, what we're up to in Ukraine, because we have committed a great deal of money. You know, we're at the forefront of sanctions. We've now got the eye of Russia focused on the United Kingdom. And it's a just war, and Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine and so on. But we've kind of the UK's written a kind of blank cheque saying, we will basically do what Zelensky says, which ultimately means we'll do what the US says, because the US will ultimately dictate what happens. And here we are again in a cost of living crisis, national debt up, taxes way up, and pumping money into this fight.
But Ben, this was
with no control. The big
success story of Brexit, wasn't it? That Boris Johnson was able to lead on Ukraine, and now everyone's turning around saying we shouldn't be getting involved.
The Anglosphere has always led when it comes to global law and order, if you like. It's always been the Americans and the UK. My gripe has got nothing to do with Brexit. It's to do with being being at the table but not really having a seat, not having a voice. You know, when we discovered that the US was pulling out of Afghanistan, only when our troops woke up one morning and the US had gone. And we had the same issue in Iraq. We've had the same issue with the Arab Spring. You know, the US stirred it all up and then absented itself. And part of the reason we've got the immigration problems we've got was because of the Arab Spring.
100%.
And I just fear that, you know, we've gone hook, line and sinker into Ukraine. There's no clear war mission. We are caught in a proxy war. This is a proxy war. And we don't know how we're going to get out. And yet again, we're beholden to someone else. In this case, again, the US.
Yeah. On this, the anniversary, whatever it is, the 75th anniversary so of the Normandy beach landings, when we really did have a special relationship and really did need each other.
Yeah, and of course, we wouldn't have won the war without American help.
We'll never forget that.
Ben, fascinating to listen to you. Thank you very much indeed for all of that. The time is just nearly 7:15, 14 minutes past 7. Here are the rest of today's top stories. Senior doctors say the NHS is struggling to provide safe and effective cancer care for patients. The Royal College of Radiologists is warning of chronic staff shortages. Half of cancer units reporting frequent delays for radiotherapy and chemotherapy.
Police chiefs say officers are now attending every home burglary in England and Wales.
That'll keep them busy.
NPCC's lead for burglary, whatever that is, says the number of burglaries is at an all-time low and is down more than 50% over the past decade.
Big football story last night. West Ham United fans, they won that European Conference League last night, but there was a bad side to it. They clashed with riot police in Prague following that win over Fiorentina. Jared Bowen scored a last-minute winner. It was fairy tale stuff to end West Ham's 43-year wait for a major trophy. Czech police detained 16 following a clash between rival fans, and this was before the match kicked off, so there was a few plastic beer glasses thrown, and a Fiorentina player was hit with a cigarette lighter or a flare or something, and it cut the back of his head quite badly. But look, it's a happy story. It was a magnificent win. Well done for British football last night.
Now, a local community is currently in a legal battle to stop drilling for oil and gas in the Surrey countryside.
It's a village called Dunsfold, made famous by Top Gear. They have a big aerodrome there. UK Gas and Oil want to undertake drilling over a 3-year period. Now, before we go into this film, I want to know from Ben Habib, this is not in my backyard. It's a nice area, it's a lovely area, whatever, but we have got an energy crisis. How on earth, folks of this land who complain about their energy bills, how are we going to solve this if we don't do these sort of things?
Well, we have to. We have to do these sorts of things, exactly right. And the notion that Keir Starmer can refuse to issue any new drilling licences in the North Sea is turning our back on a natural resource which would so benefit the United Kingdom. I mean, I have real issues with the last 25 years, Tony Blair and then obviously the Conservatives after the Labour government not having a coherent energy policy. It's all well and good going for renewable, sustainable energy and everything else. But gas, by the way, is a clean energy. You know, it was very nearly approved by the EU as something that would go towards your green credentials. And here we have our gas reserve shut down, Rough, which is our largest reserve and critical for our independence, if you like, with gas, basically not being used, North Sea gas not being extracted, oil wells not being drilled, and the North Sea transition deal, which you may or may not be familiar with from March 2021, was a deal with the oil and gas industry to shut down the North Sea just before we came out of lockdown. So we've had, and the reason we've got really high inflation is because we haven't got a grip of our energy bills. And we've got to get ahead of this curve. We've got to get gas going. We've got to get oil going. It's all very good and desirous and correct that we should reduce carbon emissions in due course, but you can't do it the way we're doing it. You know, you've got to do it the way the Americans are. I think I said earlier, you know, they come at it from a position of strength. They're completely independent in fossil fuels.
When you look back at the coalition government under David Cameron and Nick Clegg, the Lib Dems, it has to be said, blocked investment in nuclear power stations, oil storage of gas around the country. So many things that you've got to say, really, is this the right way? And I suppose what we're saying, whatever your political party, wherever you live, whatever, people are really going to have to think about how we progress with this. Ben, thank you very much indeed.
Well, to Dunsfold, where they say any environmental harm will actually be temporary, but campaigners are disagreeing, and our national reporter Paul Hawkins has been looking into the row.
I'm meeting Protect Dunsfold, a local group formed in 2019 to fight drilling by UKOG, that's UK Oil and Gas.
Talk us through, very simply, what are the two main legal challenges in this judicial review?
One of them is about the impact to the AMB. The area of outstanding national beauty at the moment finishes on the road down there under the bottom of Hascombe Hill, but there is a plan to extend it which will include the whole of Dunsfold, and one of the claims is they didn't take account of it properly.
The other reason is that on the same day the government said yes to drilling in Dunsfold, it said no to drilling in Ellesmere Port, citing emissions as a reason.
This is inconsistent decision-making, which is something that's not allowed.
Together with Waverley Borough Council and backed by the Good Law Project, they're seeking a judicial review of the government's decision to allow exploratory drilling near Dunsfold.
It's been going on for some time, isn't it?
It's been going on for 4.5 years now, since February 2019. So we've managed to keep UKOG out of that field.
And this is where the drilling would happen. In this field, there'd be an access road built through this field with the sheep. It would run through here, and then this is where the drilling would take place. In the early 1980s, oil and gas deposits were thought to be beneath these hills, but it wasn't thought commercially viable to try and extract it. UK Oil and Gas think that's now changed. They reckon there could be up to 30 to 40 billion cubic feet of gas beneath our feet, worth £124 million. And they want to take 3 years exploring the ground beneath us to try and find it.
How do they justify such a small project as this being allowed to take place in this beautiful environment? Its output, by their own reckoning, is going to be very small in terms of barrels of oil or gas.
UKOG declined to comment on an ongoing legal case. So we spoke to UK Onshore Oil and Gas, who are the industry body.
In terms of energy density, the amount of energy you get per square kilometre from oil and gas is orders of magnitude greater than it would be from wind and solar.
Do you understand why they would fight this?
Look,
because if it was in your village, they were going to make these huge changes to the village, which there seemingly there would be, with extra traffic, you know, tearing up the landscape. Even if it's for a short period, which I know you claim.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's not a claim, it's a fact. Like, there have been 2,100 onshore oil and gas wells drilled in the UK. Okay? Look around the country, you don't tend to see them. They're really well hidden. And once the resource has been depleted, the land is returned to its former use, typically agriculture. So it is a temporary use of the land. Exactly a year ago today, the government rejected a gas site in the north of England on climate change grounds. And
this is Ellesmere Port.
That's correct. And approved one in the south of England. It is absolutely up to government to explain that inconsistency, because we criticised it at the time. We said both sites should have been approved.
If you lose the judicial review, what happens next? You're not giving up?
No, the fight goes on, and we'd have to explore whatever paths were legally possible. It's not going to be an easy route for UKOG to follow, even if they win this appeal.
Residents of this quintessentially English village are determined to keep their part of the world forever green and pleasant. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Beautiful part of the world, it has to be said.
Yeah, but our energy reserves are very low. And we need to have energy security. Not an easy one to solve, but give us your solutions, whatever you think.
Speaking of not easy... Oh, sorry, go on. I was going to say, speaking of not easy solutions to solve, what do you think about getting rid of sell-by dates and introducing the sniff test? M&S are doing away with them.
You can't sniff.
Well, that's true. I've got a SNOMI or whatever it's called after COVID.
So you can't...
I can't smell things very well. Like, I've got a mild bit of smell coming back. But anyway, apparently M&S is doing away with best before dates. So you have to just check your milk by sniffing it.
The way we used to. Oh, I wouldn't do that.
And it stops the milk being poured down the sink. I do hate to see milk being poured down the sink.
I have an aversion to butter, because when I was probably 7 or so, I was on a farm when they churned their own butter. And it doesn't smell nice.
Really?
No, it's not pasteurised or anything.
Well, we talked about
this is people doing this at their kitchen
yesterday.
table.
I love butter and cheese. But I can't imagine butter going off very easily, or maybe we just eat it too quickly.
No, it's the way it's prepared. It's not all pasteurised, put in a factory and whatever it is. It's real butter.
Would you trust your nose to test your milk? And what do you think about M&S doing this? Would it stop us wasting gallons, litres?
Well, you should trust your nose. You should.
No more. Stop it. Stay with us as we ask, why are British men so irresistible to American celebrities? We'll talk about that next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. It's 7:27. Still to come on today's programme.
Just before 8, find out about the extreme lengths some people are going to as the dental crisis worsens. A fifth of adults, that's fifth is 1 in 5.
Excellent maths there.
You know, all this business, they resort to pulling their own teeth out. I don't know how much.
Give me a case study of someone who's actually done this.
Who's actually done it. And then how do you seal it up again? There you are, West Ham United, the Hammers last night, night of celebration for them. Their first trophy of 43 years. At 8:20, we'll head over to their London stadium for the morning after party. I doubt it'll probably be empty. It'll be empty. But anyway, well done, everybody. It was a good match last night, good win. If you were there, if you've got pictures, gbviews@gbnews.com.
And my goodness me, the inbox this morning. Everyone's banging on about Blanket on the Ground now. Kim says, we're both 50 years old. We grew up listening to Blanket on the Ground. Every now and then we put it on and dance around the kitchen whilst making Sunday lunch. Thank you for your reminder this morning.
That's romantic. We were talking about picnics and the good weather come the weekend.
Yeah, and the pollen bomb.
It's a good time to bring the blanket out and put the blanket
that's true.
on the ground. OK, well
we've been asking
Billy Joe
people...
Spears, incidentally. No.
Oh, right, yeah, that's who sang the song. Loads of you coming back with your suggestions of where you're going to be going this weekend. Helen says, I'm not going anywhere. I live 300 yards from the beach at Paignton in Devon. Aren't you lucky? I always have something to see here. Paul says, I'll be at home in sunny Sidcup while everyone else will be sitting in a traffic jam.
Yeah, well, Helen won't be because she only lives 300 yards from the beach.
Exactly.
You know, that's good, but we get the idea there. Right, lovely. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now, Taylor Swift and Matt Healy, who is an English singer, have reportedly called time on their relationship.
But given Swift's swift relationship history, it is unlikely that she is done with UK men because they seem to be her number one predilection.
OK. Well, she joins a host of other American women who have fallen for British men. So today we're asking, what is it that makes UK gents so resistible? Entrepreneur and media commentator Amy Ansell says UK men are kinder and more gentlemanly.
Aww.
Meanwhile, lifestyle expert Vicky Barra believes all cultures have their own unique characteristics. And I think that's true. Ladies, good morning to you.
Good morning.
But Vicky, I think that's very true. And I think when people say British men, they often just mean English men.
Oh, here we go.
True. That is true.
Jamie Dornan. Hello.
No, but I think you're more likely to find that it's an Englishman type thing, because I think Jamie Dornan, and I know Jamie very well, is Irish through and through. I don't think he'd be the same as Hugh Grant, for instance.
No, yeah, you're right. The Hugh Grant
yes,
thing
I'm
is...
right, as usual. Yes, thank you for acknowledging
As you were.
that. Yeah. So, for instance, Vicky, I mean, can you tell that I'm different than someone who's English?
Well, I think that you've got your own unique accent, which is incredible in its own way. I do feel that British people with that accent do have this charm about them, especially really quintessential English men.
Posh boys.
But that's a posh voice, yeah.
I love a posh boy accent.
It does give you, well, for me, it gives me some kind of familiarity. And I guess, especially for American women, maybe they associate it with finding their own Prince Charming.
Oh, well, let's find out. Amy, is that what it was? You saw dollar signs and a fairy castle when you heard an English accent?
Well, actually, it was a Scottish accent.
Ah, there we go. Dispelling the myths.
I remember about 16 years ago, I was in New York dating American men, many New Yorkers, and they were very brash and cocky, and they had this inflated sense of self. And I would compare those men to like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, you know, pounding his chest. Whereas the British men that I met when I moved to the UK, and actually I worked for an airline called EOS Airlines that just catered to British and American people because obviously they just flew New York, London. So I always saw it on the flights. I was a flight attendant at the time. And I remember meeting my husband, and he was the complete opposite of the men I was dating in New York. He was gentlemanly and charming and chivalrous and kind, polite, more like the Prince Charming from Disney.
Amy, it's fascinating that you say that. And in all honesty, the most polite, gentlemanly men that I have ever met have all been Americans. And the reason I say that, there's a part of America, and you can tell me whether it's mid-America or whatever, that have that sort of cowboy approach where they call people ma'am and sir.
You're welcome.
And you're welcome. And they have a strength, and they wear Stetsons, which is absolutely the most magnificent dress accessory. But there is a certain politeness amongst a certain type of American, is there not?
Well, I think you're talking about Southern men, Southern charm, or even those from the West. I personally am from the East Coast. I'm from New York, so that was my experience. And I also then moved to LA at one point in my life. Same thing, these sort of smarmy, overly confident, brash men. So I think you're right, Eamonn. The men in the South and the West are more like that. But overall, I would choose a Brit over American men any day, including men. You're part of the group.
Well, 100%. And I want to ask, Vicky, I mean, you started by saying people of all cultures have their own charms, but within the UK, British men, there are so many different accents, and I talk a lot about how much I love all different accents. I particularly love the West Country accent. I love an Irish accent. I love a Scouser accent. So, I mean, which of the British accents do you think is the most appealing? Because it's the Taylor Swift of this, well, she likes the toffs, doesn't she? But they're all charming. It's Colin Farrell accents.
That's so true. It's such an interesting question, actually. I would say for people within the UK, we know what the different areas in the UK represent, and I would say that we associate different characteristics with people, say, from Liverpool, and there's different qualities in each different area, and it's really interesting, actually, because it's only to do with what we perceive. It's not. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that it's true and these characteristics are actually set in stone at all, but it's what we associate accents with. But I would say for people outside of the UK, they think about the classic, quintessential, very posh British accent when they think of British accents, and they probably think, oh, so well-educated, respectful, Prince Charming. A lot of people love the royal family, so they associate the British accent with that kind of accent and all of the qualities that come with that. But
well, it's a good job somebody does, because in the UK, everyone hates toffs accents. No one's allowed to be posh. It's like the one accent you're allowed to be prejudiced against. And if you say you like a posh accent, you're a snob. But a good job the Yanks and everybody else loves it. We have to leave it there. Amy Ansell, Vicky Barra, thank you both so much for your perspectives. I tell you who does have a very toffy, Hugh Granty accent. Freddie Gray.
Yeah, but you like that. You like that. That's good.
Yeah, so listen,
but
he's up next.
These two ladies, just could I say to both of them, it wouldn't matter. They could pull, as we'd say, anybody with any accent. Look at the two of them. Look at them. They would be like
He's not
magnets.
talking about me, Mr. Director.
No. Anyway, we can't see them, but there we go, guys. Thank you very much indeed. So, if you're working at Heathrow, a lot of staff there are being described as greedy for turning down a double-digit pay rise. More on that as we go through the papers with Claire and Freddie next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 7:39. Let's bring you up to date with today's front pages of the newspapers.
Times, first of all, they say Rishi Sunak is ready to approve Boris Johnson's honours list, which they say could calm tensions between different factions within the Conservative Party.
Meanwhile, The Guardian are going with more Partygate revelations. This time they're saying that there's pressure on the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson after reports he hosted friends at Chequers despite COVID restrictions.
The Mail says, nice try, Kate, as they capture the Princess of Wales training with the England rugby team. They also write that police will attend every home burglary for the first time following a breakthrough with chief constables. It's amazing that we think that's...
Yeah, well, yesterday it was the exact opposite on the front of the Star, wasn't it? In the Express, airport strikes are threatening summer of strikes, according to the headlines here. A summer of strife, forgive me. There we go. Heathrow staff are branded greedy after rejecting a 10%.
Well, let's get into that story first of all. We've got Freddie and Claire here in the studio to talk about that. Claire, you've selected that story.
Yep.
What's going on at Heathrow?
You just couldn't make this up, really. LHR is the airport code for Heathrow, when in reality it will be living hell reigns for Terminal 2 and Terminal 5. We've got striking unions who have disclosed that they asked for 11.4% pay rise, which was in line with the inflation when they first started any talks with the government. CPI is 8.7%. They have rejected a monumental offer of 10.1%. I think that's awful. I'm all for people, you know, fighting for their rights and getting what they feel they have to get, but this is just awful. 31 days of disruption they will cause over Terminal 2 and Terminal 5. Heathrow is a hub airport. Lots of people travelling from Scotland, Northern Ireland will use, and the rest of England and Wales will use London Heathrow as a hub to get to wherever they want to go.
You say that, Claire. I was speaking to people last week who are flying to your airport, Schiphol.
Oh, yeah, Amsterdam.
Yeah, because they're using that now as a hub. There are different places, and people will fly to Paris now just to take out. So I'm talking to people from Scotland, people from Ireland, people from the north of England, whatever. And Heathrow could be losing out business because of this.
Well, they will, definitely. And, of course, the airport's authorities have lost thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds during the pandemic. They need to get bums on flights. They need to get footfall through these airports. And what do they decide to do? No, sorry. Not only the computer says no, we say no. And I, for one, think that's awful. And I think they should just get a grip and get back to work.
Do you know, it's one thing, isn't it, disrupting people as they're trying to get to work, but disrupting people as they're trying to go on holiday.
On holiday.
It's particularly cruel.
So cruel.
It is vicious. But maybe some of this could be solved, Freddie, by a story that's in many of the papers, why the Prime Minister's in, one of the reasons he's in Washington at the moment, and that is artificial intelligence, and that London becomes a centre for regulating artificial intelligence. This is front page of The Telegraph.
What you're saying, artificial intelligence could control the airports?
It can do anything.
It can do anything, although I'd be a bit nervous, given that everybody says AI will want to kill us all quite soon.
Yes.
To get in a plane that was being directed by...
Well, you know, I don't think we're that far off, maybe 12 years, 10 years from planes flying themselves.
Yeah.
It depends, actually, would you have the confidence to step on board?
I mean, they
plane.
already can, pretty much, but they have a pilot. I was once in a military plane in Pakistan, and don't ask me why. There were two pilots, and the first pilot fell asleep, and the other pilot said, "Don't worry, it's fine, I'm still here." And then 10 minutes later, the other pilot was asleep, and we said, we woke them up, and they said, "No, it's OK, it's all automatic, it's all fine."
No, don't like that. But I think that's what AI will be like. I mean, personally, I can't bear having to do my own at the till, you know, shopping.
Scan, yeah.
But you know,
because you forget to take the.
No, that's not
potentially
true.
shoplift,
That's
Missy.
not true.
Yes, you do.
Excuse me,
you
that's
do.
slander. No.
We should talk about the story.
Yes, let's do that.
Because it's obviously Rishi Sunak in Washington pitching Britain as the centre of AI, that will be the global regulator of AI. And I thought we were doing this because, actually, we don't really have any AI. But the Telegraph has this statistic, which I've not heard before, and it's extraordinary. The UK is a world leader in AI, ranking third behind the US and China. The British AI sector already contributes $3.7 billion to the economy and employs 50,000 people across the country. I mean, that's staggering. I cannot believe that 50,000 people in Britain work in artificial intelligence.
Who are they quoting their sources from those figures?
No source.
No source.
No
Just
source
plucked
quoted.
those figures out of
It's
thin air
artificial.
from the Treasury. Or...
Maybe it was written by a bot.
Yeah.
See,
An
but-
unreliable bot.
You see, I went into my brother's house 2 weeks ago. He's got a very broad accent. And, you know, and he lifts up his phone and he goes... and the TV does things. The TV does things. And I'm thinking, I can't even understand him, and I'm his brother. But suddenly it then puts a film on or it switches channels or whatever it happens to be. And it's just... So that's AI.
That's AI.
That's AI.
It doesn't talk back to him in the same voice.
No. Do you talk to your TV?
I do not talk to the TV. We do have an Alexa, which I find quite sinister, and I don't like talking.
My Alexa and my TV don't understand me. When I press the button, say iPlayer, it comes up with something completely different. iPlayer.
AYE.
I'm not even from Northern Ireland.
Yeah, we've got Alexa. I lose my temper with Alexa all the time. Alexa, stop!
Gosh.
You've probably set off hundreds of thousands of Alexas now.
Yeah.
Across the country, unlike your brother, Eamonn.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm very impressed he does it. And also, for years in my cars, I've had a button that could say, you know, put on Radio 2, or put, you know, and I don't know how to use it.
What, by speaking? Voice-activated radio?
You'll have it in your car as well.
Oh, I doubt it. It's about 1,000 years old.
Well, I don't know. Do you talk to your car? Do you have anything?
I don't talk to the car, no.
No? Okay.
I don't drive now.
We've got a Skoda.
Got rid of my car.
We don't do it in Skodas.
Oh, there we go.
These are things that await us, but the depth of this, and you say, you know, where is AI in our lives? It's lots of places that we don't even know, and people like us haven't even invited it in to yet. And I can see where it can be a huge help, but I could see where it could be quite worrying. And I mean, things like, you know, passport control, where you go through and it should scan your eyes and whatever, and there shouldn't be queues at passport control.
No, there shouldn't, you're right.
It shouldn't be in this day and age, but yet there is, invariably there is.
Freddie, can I ask you, with your American specialisms, your view on this trip of Rishi over there? I mean, we were talking to Ben Habib earlier, and he was quite down about it, to be honest. Do you think that this is a significant moment? And do you think, something might come of it?
I think I'd probably agree with Ben that Britain is a bit craven with America, although I don't think Rishi Sunak's going to use the word special relationship. A spokesman for him said he might use it if it comes up, but he has no plans to use it. So I think that's quite a good move from Britain, because Boris Johnson, when he was Foreign Secretary, said, us endlessly talking about the special relationship makes us sound needy. And that's true. And I think, Biden has made it clear he doesn't really like Britain. I don't think that's paranoid to think it. It's pretty obvious. He thinks Brexit's terrible. He's very worried about Northern Ireland and so on. But I don't think that he's got... Britain and America's economies are very well tied together, so I don't think there can ever be a sort of parting of the ways or anything like that. But the alliance is not as strong as it was, and maybe that's a good thing in some ways. The Iraq War was when the sort of special relationship talk was at its hottest, and that was a disaster.
Well, except we want a trade deal.
We do want a trade deal, but that's not on the table.
It's never going to happen. Well, yeah, not officially.
Not until the Republican president.
OK. Claire, small businesses to launch legal action against energy companies over undeclared commission fees.
This is unbelievable.
Reports The Eye.
Yeah, I didn't even know this happened. Before even the gas pipe in Russia and Ukraine was damaged, before the prices actually started to increase, we were all told, change supplier, it will be cheaper. But not only that, domestically for our own homes and families, but small businesses were also poached by third parties to change their contracts, to change their tariffs. And the Eye have reported today that this will be a scandal as big as the banking scandal for missold PPI. And that the banks have spent £89 million, I think it is, in payments for people who were missold PPI. And this is turning into the same thing, 192,000, the amount firms could receive on average in another group action close to being settled. It's ridiculous. Who would have thought that small businesses who would have to strive to get everything they possibly can to get their profits up, to get their business in, have been duped by a third party? It's all about money. Third party trying to get a cheaper rate, a cheaper tariff on the energy firm. And I think the energy firms are complicit. They're just as bad. They've allowed and they've enabled it.
OK. Freddie, here is a story again in The Eye, which is the most unfortunate headline. It's about sexual offences being full of holes.
Yeah.
At MPs. So,
yes. Well, this is the House of Commons Commission is proposing that any MP accused or arrested of sexual harassment will be banned from Westminster, banned from the Houses of Parliament. And obviously that sounds sensible on its face. But also, as a lot of MPs are pointing out, this could lead to vexatious complaints that are lodged for political reasons. So if I don't want you around Parliament, I'm going to say that you sexually harassed me.
Yeah.
And that will get you out the picture for a while. MPs would still be allowed to vote by proxy or remotely, but they would be removed. And I don't know whether the Commission are going to go ahead with this. I don't know whether it's a good idea. There obviously has been quite a toxic culture of abuse in Westminster over the years, but
What percentage of claims have been
proven to be
false?
A lot. I mean, again, a lot of this stuff. It's like a lot of Me Too stuff. When what is abuse? Where does it start? Where does it end? I think Westminster people like this subject. It's an exciting subject for them. People like standing up and talking about it in Parliament. Jess Phillips does it a lot. But really, it's really a kind of form of gossip, I think. It's a bit like the Partygate stuff, it's just, he did this, he did that.
I just wonder who sat in a room and thought this up. Who actually sat in a room and thought this up, that they
House
should
of
actually
Commons
do
Commission.
this.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they're saying. And also the GMB union rep for parliamentary staff. So I think this is to safeguard parliamentary staff, not necessarily against MPs almost.
Yes.
But then almost another sense of othering.
Sorry,
you cut me.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it has happened. It's bad. You remember Pincher, that actually led to the downfall of Boris.
Well, yeah.
Claire, here's a great definition in the Times about
North and South.
What constitutes a north-south divide.
Yep.
And what are they saying it is?
We can actually measure it here in the panel. Have you had a Greggs, Isabel?
If it was closer, I would, but it's too far away for us slightly. Yeah. But...
Well, the north and south divide, not only, it used to be defined as the Watford Gap, now it's if you've got a Pret or if you've got a Greggs. Greggs, of course, the Newcastle institution of puff pastry and the likes and bakes, are more inclined to be situated geographically in the north as opposed to in the south. And Pret, of course, the sandwich maker, the Earl of Sandwich, made the sandwich, and I think it's a direct ascent. Pret are started up in Hampstead, actually, in London, and are now rolling over. So you move into an area and you can see where you are politically, environmentally and fiscally if you've got a Greggs or a Pret.
We recently did a story, though, about, was it a campaign to keep Greggs out of Cornwall?
Because of the Cornwall pasty.
Because of the pasty, and there's a huge row about that, the invasion of Greggs into the southwest.
Oh, I think a Greggs is lovely. You had one last week, didn't you?
I had a bacon roll.
Yeah.
Bacon roll?
Greggs, it was good.
I agree with you there. I think they do those very well.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on the sausage roll. I don't know why.
Flaky pastry, you choke
a couple of weeks ago, you made me dip a sausage roll in a cup of tea.
And you didn't dislike it, Freddie?
The sausage roll was all right. There was a sandwich.
The sandwich was revolting.
It was a bit much.
Well, interestingly, the mathematician who did all this, did the study and did the statistics, also said it works for supermarkets. And you can guess what the supermarkets are: Waitrose and Morrison's. So there we are, another north-south divide. But of course, I think when you look at it from a business point of view, Morrison's is a Bradford, they're a northern chain, northern firm, as are Greggs. So, and Waitrose are very much southern. So I don't think it's necessarily anything to do with where you live or what you live or how much you earn. More to do with the business model.
I do think, by and large, you get better fish and chip shops further north you go than in the London area.
It's difficult to find a good fish and chip shop in London.
I agree.
Well, the Golden Hind's
difficult to find good newspaper reviewers, but we've found two good ones today. Freddie and Claire back in 40 minutes' time. Rishi Sunak's in Washington, and here's your weather.
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Changes are on the way, but today is more of the same. A bit drab for most of us out there this morning, but we will again see the sunshine coming through. But the area of high pressure we've seen over recent days is just starting to shift, and this low down to the southwest is starting to encroach. The isobars squeezing together. It's made for a windy night in the southwest and a blustery day here during the day today. The cloud has come back in overnight, and most of us are starting a bit grey again. The eastern side of England and the northern half of Scotland may well stay pretty drab. But elsewhere, notice the cloud melting away from late morning onwards to reveal quite a bit of sunshine. Still that cool breeze, though, on the east coast. Even if it does turn sunny here, temperatures pegged back. The highest temperatures further west, and particularly in the southwest, where the humidity will be starting to rise. The sunshine turning hazy through this afternoon as we start to see more of a change. This is rain. Haven't seen much of that recently, in the form of showers coming towards the southwest through the night and during Friday. Elsewhere, it's going to be another dry night, and the cloud starts to just push back inland on that easterly breeze. Temperatures mostly 9 to 10 Celsius, so coolish, but it will be a mild night, a warm night in the southwest, getting quite humid here with still quite brisk winds. And it's in the southwest where we're going to have the showers tomorrow. Hit and miss, not everywhere seeing one, but there could be one or two heavy ones. For much of the UK, it's another cracking day. Tomorrow again starting grey. Again, that east coast susceptible to the mists sticking around, and it will be cooler here as well, but a better chance, certainly a little inland, of seeing some sunshine. And again, it'll be in the west where we have those top temperatures. On the south coast, 26 degrees Celsius is possible. It turns hotter as we go through the weekend. The humidity rises as well, so the nights will be getting warmer, and increasing chance of seeing showers and even some thunderstorms this weekend.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my
7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Rishi Sunak announces a global summit on AI as he continues his diplomatic trip to Washington.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock on this Thursday morning. It's the 8th of June and you're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister will visit the White House today to meet the US President. Rishi Sunak's first trip to Washington included a celebratory baseball game at National Park and laying a wreath for troops at Arlington Cemetery.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister denies the government is resisting the release of Boris Johnson's unredacted WhatsApp messages. It follows allegations that Mr Johnson hosted a friend at Chequers and COVID rules were still in place.
Prince Harry says he would feel some injustice if his phone hacking claims were rejected by the High Court. The Duke of Sussex also claimed that the Mirror newspaper group went to unlawful and extreme lengths gathering information on him and for his entire life.
West Ham United ended their 43-year wait for a major trophy after winning the Europa Conference League in dramatic style. Some West Ham fans, however, were forced to end their evening early after clashing with riot police in Prague.
And a health alert's been issued for parts of England and temperatures are expected to reach 30 degrees over the next few days. Vulnerable people in the Midlands and London have been told to be prepared ahead of the soaring weekend weather. But what can we expect for later today?
It's more of the same with our weather today, which means for most of us, more blue sky. For the east, still cool and cloudy, but there are changes on the way. For more on that, join me for your full GB News forecast later on.
to our top story then this morning. Rishi Sunak has announced that the UK will host the first global summit on AI safety in the autumn.
Well, he's due to speak to President Biden about the potential risk of this emerging technology.
And they'll also discuss further support for Ukraine, actions to bolster energy security, and they'll also address the ongoing climate crisis.
Let's talk more about all of this. Our political reporter, Olivia Utley. No mention of trade, though.
No mention of a trade deal. And in fact, what Rishi Sunak said on the plane yesterday suggested that a trade deal was pretty much off the table. He said it's not a priority for the UK or the US at the moment. Essentially, until there is a Republican president in the White House, this isn't even going to be a conversation. So what they're talking about instead is a deal on critical minerals and a digital deal. So basically much, much narrower deals. And they're going to be speaking about the potential of Britain being involved in some of the green subsidies that America has proposed. So British car manufacturers, for example, could be let off some particular trade tariffs. But, you know, it's a very far cry from a full-on trade deal with the US. The way that the Prime Minister is sort of hoping to, well, get into Joe Biden's good books and to show that he is a serious leader on the world stage is this AI conference. He's talking about a big conference for the UK in October, and it would put Britain on the map, he hopes, as the sort of global leader in AI. Let's see how it plays out. There are those who think that Britain isn't particularly well placed to be a global leader in AI. It's a pretty small country, and in comparison to, you know, obviously Russia, China, but also the US, although it is making strides forward, those strides aren't enormous.
We're hearing it's unlikely Rishi Sunak will use the word special relationship because he pretty much acknowledges, we've been hearing this morning, it's not really where it was anymore. What is your assessment of how that relationship, though, has changed under his premiership as opposed to his predecessors, and how he's being received into the Oval Office today?
Well, Sunak is certainly trying very hard indeed. He fits in quite well naturally in the US. He did a postgraduate degree there. He worked there for a while. He's quite well immersed in US culture. And of course, with the AUKUS Pact, the Windsor Framework, which kind of sorted out the Northern Ireland Protocol issue, which was clearly a big problem for Joe Biden, I would say that Sunak has made strides where his predecessors, both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, failed to do. That said, I think that Joe Biden really is quite anti-British, really, and he has been, you know, he considers himself Irish and has had massive problems with the protocol agreement, and definitely I don't think that the special relationship is anything like where it was. Kim Darroch, the former US ambassador, was writing yesterday suggesting that Joe Biden has made it quite plain that he doesn't like Britain, and whatever Sunak does, they're not going to get very much further forwards. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Better than it was, but not nearly as good as it used to be.
And whilst you're talking, Olivia, we saw a little glimpse of his Instagram reels there, and I've been talking about it a bit this morning. And you were telling us that actually he's got some pedigree when it comes to the person behind his campaigns online.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that the Prime Minister was criticised for in the leadership election last year was being sort of almost too slick. And he certainly is very slick indeed. The guy who's in charge of his branding is a man called Cass Horowitz, actually Anthony Horowitz's son.
Oh, right, well, fair enough.
And he's known to be fantastic at his job, you know, best in the business, a real guru. So, yeah, Rishi Sunak's Instagram is looking very, very slick indeed, and perhaps not what you'd expect from a middle-aged, it's even middle-aged, he's so young, Prime Minister.
And do you think that will do anything for him? Again, we've been talking about how, you know, probably a lot of over 50s aren't even on Instagram. Who's his audience for this? He's obviously spending money on it. Is this going to get him votes, or is this going to help him post-politics, perhaps?
I think that it just fits in so well. I think it's partly just his personality. Yeah. He likes to be slick and well-branded, and I think that he is very keen to show himself as a global leader. And on AI, you can see the way he's really trying to do this. But, you know, I discovered yesterday that Sunak is the Prime Minister who has attended the fewest number of Prime Minister's questions based on how long he's been in office.
Really?
Because he spent so much of his premiership globe-trotting, and that is his legacy on the global stage is something I think which matters a lot to him, which probably is why he's so keen to push out these slick Instagram videos.
Interesting. And
Thank you.
if you didn't pick up a lot of that, you can revisit it on Instagram. Yeah, we can replay it all there. Thanks very much indeed, Olivia. The time's 7 minutes now past 8 o'clock. Prince Harry's battle with the British tabloids continued when he accused Mirror Group newspapers of phone hacking and gaining information by deception yesterday.
But today it is the turn of Nikki Sanderson, who makes her case against the publishers. Let's speak to the ex-newspaper editor and media commentator Neil Wallace, who can tell us about the whole case against the newspaper group. So what are we expecting to hear in court today then, Neil?
I think we've moved on from Prince Harry and we're going to varied minor celebrities who are simply going to recount their claims that at some point they were either phone hacked or suffered some kind of illegal activity. I think the thing that the viewers ought to remember is this is pretty historic stuff. This isn't talking about modern day media. The phone hacking saga actually began 17 years ago, August 2006. And I don't think any credible pundit has said or revealed since then any kind of continuation of the practice. I think it came as a huge shock to Fleet Street to know that A, they'd been caught, and B, that it was actually illegal what they were doing. And so we are talking stuff that happened a long time ago. That's not to say, in the case of Nikki Sanderson or any of the others, that this was in any way anything other than illegal, hurtful, wrongful. But just for your readers to remember, it's all pretty ancient stuff.
First of all, we should remind people who Nikki Sanderson is, if they don't. She was the former Coronation Street actress. She is an actress. And Neil, I mean, there would have been a time come, particularly a weekend, that we would have picked up the papers and we would have seen lots of stories into the personal lives of people like Nikki. Is it just me, or are we seeing less of those stories based on that type of person?
Well, I think it's a mixture of things, Eamonn. It isn't just you, though many things can be attributed to you, of course. But it really comes down to the Leveson Tribunal in 2012, after which there was an explosion, as it were, in two things. One, privacy rights. People found it much, much easier to actually go to a court and get injunctions and to block and to say damages and obtain damages for what were once pretty common newspaper fodder. And because of Leveson, because of the sort of public opinion turnaround against tabloid newspapers, the appetite for them within the newspaper industry, I think, has been diminished. Anything goes that was once accused of the tabloids has gone, and newspapers are much Neil.
But the damage and the hurt of that era certainly remains, and that's what Prince Harry has been talking about, isn't it, over the last 2 days? It was being described as polite but spiky in the witness box yesterday, with things ramped up a little bit on the second day for both the barrister and indeed for him. How do you think his case has gone? Because it seems as though, well, from our assessment anyway, he sort of tied himself up in knots a little bit in terms of providing the evidence and meeting that threshold.
Well, I think there's a headline in the Daily Mail, I think it is today, that essentially says, has the Mirror KC asking him, is there any evidence, can you provide any evidence, hard evidence, that you were phone hacked? And Harry had to admit this on a number of occasions, no, there simply isn't. He believes there was, and it's sort of, I think it is something he appears to need to believe, that everything that happened to him was down to malpractice by journalists and private investigators, etc. And he certainly has made it a crusade, and in the process, incidentally, dragged all this back into the public arena, and it is damaging to the print media that this is all out there yet again. But what came through over the last 2 days is Harry has not provided a shred of hard evidence about it. And it's worth remembering that after those arrests back in 2006, for the following 5 years, Scotland Yard actually had hundreds of police officers, and I mean literally hundreds of police officers, investigating phone hacking. And they investigated exhaustively the newspapers, the main culprits of this, and they simply found no evidence that supports any suggestion that Prince Harry was phone hacked.
OK. Neil Wallace, ex-newspaper editor and media commentator, with his assessment on Harry's case at the High Court. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Neil. The time is 13 minutes past 8 o'clock, and following the explosion of the dam in Ukraine, Ukrainian President Zelensky has said the situation in the occupied part of Kherson is absolutely catastrophic as occupiers abandon the people in totally dreadful conditions.
Well, there are concerns that Russia could do the same thing to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The facility is the largest nuclear station in Europe. It's held by the Russians. Let's speak to former NATO Chemical, Biological and Nuclear Forces Chief Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Good morning to you. My understanding is there are two particular stories in relation to nuclear here. One is the impact on a nuclear power station close to where this dam was breached, and there's concerns about whether the cooling ponds will dwindle and there'll be problems with radioactive issues there. My other understanding is there are threats, or allegations at least, from the Ukrainians. They think the Russians are going to possibly bomb or shell the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. So how grave a nuclear crisis are we looking at in this whole conflict at the moment?
Good morning. Well, I think it's pretty grave. And if you look at the dam and blowing up the dam, and to me, there's absolutely no other explanation that the Russians did it, because we knew that they were occupying it. We knew that they'd put explosives on it. And the effect that blowing up the dam had is not dissimilar to what a nuclear accident at Zaporizhzhia would cause. It's caused massive damage. It's affected the counteroffensive, because a lot of that land that's now flooded couldn't be gone across. There's a huge ecological disaster and also an agricultural disaster. So it has sort of cut off the western side of Ukraine for any offensive. Now, if you go further east, you come to Zaporizhzhia, the nuclear power station. The International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors there reported in May, only a few weeks ago, that they believed the Russians had wired explosives to the reactors in Zaporizhzhia. So we know there's a lot of fighting going on around there. So that is why we are concerned that, again, the Russians might use Zaporizhzhia as an improvised nuclear device to block off vast swathes of Ukraine, which would prevent the Ukraine counteroffensive heading south and retaking ground that the Russians have taken. And just the final bit on this, would Putin do this? I think one has to look back to the previous tyrant in Europe, Hitler. Would Hitler have done something like this? I think there's absolutely no doubt he would. So it is certainly in the psyche of the Russians. The only slight saving grace at the moment is the weather's not very good in the area, and it's likely that any contamination that would ensue from an accident at Zaporizhzhia would probably go towards Russia. But we know that Putin has little care for collateral damage and civilian casualties. So whether that would be a factor, who knows? But it's crucial now that the UK and the US do absolutely state that this would be a red line, which would mean that NATO would have to take action.
Colonel, the actual breach in the dam itself, what's your best guess on this? Is there any doubt in your mind as to who breached that dam?
Eamonn, absolutely no doubt at all. We know that the Russians had put explosives on there. It's the only route over the Dnipro in that area that Ukraine forces would take. And the Russian claiming that it was artillery damage, absolutely, that would not happen. You could not have breached a dam like this. And I think lots of people understand the dam busters and the difficulty they had breaching a dam like this. You need a very sophisticated explosion to break it. No stray artillery shell would do it. And it's only the Russians who have benefited in a funny sort of way. I know that some of their soldiers have been injured and killed. I know that some of their defensive positions have been compromised. But actually, there's now a massive lake covering hundreds of kilometers, which has proved for the Russians a pretty good defense against the coming offensive. So no doubt at all it was the Russians.
Hamish, listening to you describing the nuclear concerns that you have this morning, my blood runs cold. I wonder, are we sleepwalking into a disaster here? There's been so much talk about the International Atomic Agency in relation to AI. We need a global watchdog. But does anybody even listen to the International Atomic Agency when they are sounding the klaxon? As you say, they've wired up the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to explosives. What's the world doing?
Well, you're right. Unfortunately, some of these international bodies, like the IEA, like the UN, have been pretty toothless. And, to be fair, NATO has sort of been sleepwalking into this problem too. It was only in February last year we suddenly woke up and realised that Putin was the new Hitler and did want to dominate Europe. And I think, with all the other things that have been troubling the world, the cost of living crisis and COVID, et cetera, our politicians, our leaders have had their eye off the ball. But I agree at the moment, quite frankly, nothing is more important. And hopefully, Prime Minister and the President of the US, as you've just been discussing, will be looking at this and making it absolutely clear to Putin that he really will be finished if he tries to create some sort of nuclear device around Zaporizhzhia. So what can we do? In my personal opinion, and me and other experts have been calling for a demilitarized zone around Zaporizhzhia for at least the last 6 months. And if the UN had any teeth and any desire to do something, then they would get involved and they would get inspectors on the ground 30 miles around Zaporizhzhia to make sure that nobody could affect this place. But it's time, absolutely, we can't just sit back and talk about it and moan about it, because if we do nothing, then we cannot complain if a disaster happens.
You've been listening to Colonel Hamish de Bretton Gordon there, former commander, UK and NATO Chemical, Biological and Nuclear Forces, speaking to us this morning from Salisbury. Thank you very much, Colonel. Appreciate it.
Big football story.
Big
Kept
football
you up
story.
last night, didn't it?
Keep me up last night.
It was a good reason to be up late because you'd had a terrible weekend football-wise, but reason to be happy again last night. Sorry to mention that.
Yeah, the thing is, and also there's a different thing when it's not your team playing, you're not invested in it so much, but I thought West Ham played really well, played a good game, and they did it in the last minute of normal time. European glory for them. Let's be speaking to Paul Coyte about that right after the break.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 8:24 is the time. Still to come on our little programme this morning.
Just before 9 o'clock, we're going to introduce you to the British Forrest Gump. And he is, Isabel?
He is William Googe, and he ran the entire length of the USA, beating the previous holder's record by an incredible 10 days.
That's a big difference, isn't it?
That is a big difference.
Just after 9 o'clock, Shadow Minister for Business and Consumers joins us to discuss Labour's new plans for an industrial Britain.
And you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us at gbnews@gbnews.com.
Mr. Paul Coyte joins us now because we're going to talk sport, and we're going to particularly wallow and cherish West Ham today. Both you and I watched the match last night, and they did the job well, didn't they?
They did do the job well, yeah, they absolutely did. Went up with penalty, which was put away beautifully. Then Fiorentina came back, and you know what? If you're going to win it, 90th minute, Jared Bowen, great ball through from Paquetá, and then...
Oh, and he was so cool, the way
wasn't he?
He was so cool, he did it well. And honestly, mate, I was sitting there going, that's another half hour, and then...
I was thinking the same as you.
It was already 10 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Way past my bedtime. God, why do they have these 8 o'clock kickoffs?
And Bowden put it in the back of the net.
Absolutely.
Oh, right.
All done and dusted, brilliant stuff.
Let's go to Paul Hawkins outside the West Ham Stadium to see how the fans are reacting, or if there is any... Well, that's not the West Ham Stadium.
Well, it's right next to it, I'm sure.
So the old Upton Park, that looks like.
Yeah.
Sure it's not. Where are you?
That's right.
In Manchester.
Coyte's got it. Coyte's got it. We're at the spiritual home of West Ham. This is where the parade is going to start in just under 12 hours' time. There's going to be a sea of West Ham fans, thousands here as the open-top bus arrives. It's going to have the team on the top. The captain, Declan Rice, only the third West Ham captain to lift a major trophy. The bus is going to then head west along Barking Road, turn right. It'll head past Plaistow Tube, past Plaistow Park. It's going to end up at Stratford Town Hall, very close to West Ham's current ground, the London Stadium, where they've been, of course, since 2016. Declan Rice joining Billy Bond for in becoming only the third West Ham captain to lift a major trophy. West Ham's first for 43 years, and I can say we're joined now by West Ham fans Andrew Smythe and his son and daughter Stephanie and Patrick. Morning to you guys. How are you feeling?
Oh, it's just an incredible night. It's once in a lifetime. You know, I wasn't around for the last one, so it's just it's an incredible feeling for the players, for all the fans. You know, it's like everyone just came together, and it was you know, incredible atmosphere.
Yeah, and Stephanie, you're a West Ham fan, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you weren't allowed to stay up to watch the game, is that right?
Yes.
So when will you get to watch it?
I don't know.
You don't know, no. But both of you, and Patrick, are you a West Ham fan, or there's a bit of a family debate at the moment, isn't there? You might be a Chelsea fan as well, mightn't you? But if you are West Ham, who's your favourite player?
Declan Rice.
Declan Rice, that's right. And who's yours?
Mikel Antonio.
Yeah, because you both of you play in the same team, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. What's your position?
Striker.
Yeah. And what about you, Patrick?
Defender.
Defender. Brilliant stuff. So are you going to get to watch the game later after school?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be good. And you're going to be talking about it all day. Yeah?
Maybe.
Maybe. And what will you be doing with your hand? What do you do when you're a West Ham fan?
The hammer sign.
Yeah, that's right, up the hammers. Are you going to let them watch it later, Dad?
They've got training actually later on today, so they'll be going to training, and then maybe we normally just watch the highlights on you know, on the phone and things like that. So they get a bit of it, and then I show them pictures, and just, you know, it's just trying to make sure that they're that they become West Ham, because like I said, it's a bit debatable. So I don't want to force him, but I just kind of I'm constantly showing him pictures and telling him how important it is. You know, I mean, West Ham, it's always been important to this area, you know, and it's been a focal point. For you know, for years and years, and it has, you know, it's not. This area has always been. Had its challenges and things like that, and West Ham's always been a bit of a focal point and something where people can come together and they've got a common interest. So
yeah. And just finally, as an ambulance makes its way past us, Declan Rice. You know, Patrick was mentioning Declan Rice there. How do you feel about him? He's on his way out, but you know, what a time to leave.
Yeah, you've just got to wish him the best, because he's done well for the club. I mean, he wants to do the best that he can in his career, so you have to kind of support him on that one. I mean, you know, obviously you don't want to lose him, but you know, he's won a trophy with West Ham. I mean, that's incredible. He's the captain, you know, so he'll always remember West Ham with fond memories. He came through the youth system, but I think you know, you've got to admire his ambition. He wants to be the best player that he can be, and I think we've got to, well, we're going to let him go, and then, but I think we'll bounce back. We'll get some players in.
Yeah, you'll get the money for him and then rebuild and kick on, right?
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, we're in the Europa conference, Europa next year, and then hopefully we do a bit better in the league. So
yeah. Really good to talk to you. Thanks so much for speaking to us. I'll let you guys go because you've got to get to school today. Okay, and do the old West Ham sign. There you go. Up the hammers, up the irons.
Thanks, Paul.
Tooting horns and whatever. And I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
Couldn't get that final thought there, but he set the scene. Absolutely set the scene, and obviously the buses in the background. Just imagine them with the winners.
Do you know what that means?
I thought it meant X Factor, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I know.
They have hammers on their badge.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
Hammers cross each other like that.
See what they did there.
Yeah.
I was just worried he got hit by the bus. He was all right, wasn't he, Paul? He was okay. Yeah, he's okay. That's good.
He was on the pavement.
Last night at the game, we mentioned Declan Rice there. Who knows where he's going to be next year? But David Moyes.
Yeah, you've got to be pleased with David Moyes. What I like about David Moyes is the fact of how he celebrated. And we've spoken about managers before, you know, that some that will stand there and not really get into it, and some will just argue. It was just pure joy on his face as he ran down the line as Jarrod Bowen scored that winner in the 90th minute. He knew
There's the boss man, David Sullivan, there shaking his hand.
Yeah, there he is.
So I wonder, does that mean there's a new contractor. He will be back.
There has to be, Eamonn. There has to be a new contract for David Moyes. I can't imagine there's not going to be. His dad, David Senior, was there as well, 87, and there was a scene as Dave's dad came down and then he handed him the medal. So it was just a lovely moment, and he's just so well deserved, because David Moyes, even West Ham fans, and they'll say that now, there were plenty just a few weeks and a few months ago that were saying he's got to go, he's not the right guy. But then that's football, you know, you win something and it's the first trophy you win in 43 years, and now there should be a statue outside about him. So anyway, it's a really great day for West Ham, and obviously the parade is going to be this afternoon as well, and it's a terrific time.
So what would have happened if they hadn't have won?
Well, as far as the parade's concerned, because obviously they've got to prepare this. So they've got to have the roads ready, they've got the open-top bus ready. So whenever you have a situation like that, you would never imagine that they have to put the stuff away, but it has to be ready. So it would have been planned weeks in advance. So had they lost...
Yeah.
It just would have, the bus would have gone back in the garage, nobody would have said anything. But there's going to be thousands out there. Because there's 30,000 West Ham fans are actually in Prague, and it was only 19,000 were allowed in the ground, probably 5,000 West Ham fans. So everybody's got to get back and enjoy the parade a little later.
Also on their travels, Jude Bellingham, Lionel Messi. Tell us where to.
Right, well, let's start with Lionel Messi, the world's greatest footballer, arguably. There was talk whether he was going to manage to go back to Barcelona, obviously spiritual home.
Yeah.
It looked a possibility, but financially it wasn't going to work, financial difficulties. And then he said that he's going to go into Miami. It kind of fits, you know, going to America, Miami, very Spanish-speaking area. He said if that didn't work out, I wanted to leave Europe and get out of the spotlight, which I'm sure David Beckham will be really pleased to hear him say that. But it's not Saudi Arabia, so that's where he's going to be going. And also the rights that he gets, the money he's going to make from Adidas and even Apple, who sponsor the MLS that you can watch on TV. He will then get a percentage of whatever is watched that he plays in. So as if he's not rich enough, he's going to make millions and millions.
And final word, Jude Bellingham.
Yep, Jude. He's only 19 still. Dortmund, now to Real Madrid. The fee is over £100 million, and they have add-ons, 100 million euros, so it's 86 million pounds. That is. There'll be add-ons, which it could go up to probably about £1 trillion, I reckon, if everything goes well for him. Still only 19. There was a chance of him going to Manchester City, but you don't turn down Real Madrid. When they come knocking, you only get one chance. So at 19, what a great opportunity for him.
Those ratings as to who the biggest club in the world is, and it was Manchester City, which surprised me, followed by Real Madrid and Barcelona, and then the mighty Man United in fourth. And
where are Spurs in that?
The Spurs were 8th, I think.
OK, I'll take 8th.
I was just thinking Madrid, though, lovely place to live.
Yeah.
So apparently the worst thing about Madrid is there's no jobs, but he doesn't need to worry about that.
He doesn't really need to worry about that.
So you've got
He'll be fine.
Nightlife, you've got the architecture, you've got the climate. I'd love a job in Madrid.
The thing is, though, I'd like to see more footballers that are going there for the architecture. It's just not happening as much
I've got nothing else
as I would like, but you never know. Jude's a smart kid, so I think he probably will like it.
Good man, and well done, Jared Brown, and all the West Ham
Well
team.
done, West Ham.
Very good, very good. Right, 25 to 9's the time. Coming up.
A former Oxfam employee says she was hounded out of the charity because she backed J.K. Rowling. We'll be going through the papers with Clem Muldoon and Freddie Gray on that.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.
Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Sick. She just said
funny.
she people say to me, why does she hang around you?
Please don't. It's the worst thing I've ever done.
Don't think it is, Isabel.
Well, there's witnesses. People heard what you called me, how you referred to me.
That's what I don't.
It was a term of endearment.
There's terrible sexual connotations to that, you know.
Is there?
Oh gosh, yes.
Hello, Daddy. Come on, Daddy.
She's only supposed to say that in private.
Oh, yeah, because you two are really good at talking in private here, aren't you? Everything gets caught.
Oh, dear. Let's get into the newspapers. It is 8:40 and we're going through one last time with Claire Muldoon and Freddie Gray.
And
Claire,
and maybe, for all we know, one last time with you as well.
can live in hope. Listen, Claire, you want to talk about Oxfam and, you know, J.K. Rowling... I mean, she's the voice of the silent majority in this country, surely, but Oxfam going quite hard on her.
You know, Oxfam, for me, I will never give another an item of clothing or book to that company. Gosh. Nor will I ever shop in there again. It is strong, because looking back, I mean, charity starts at home. Well, for Oxfam have been lining their pockets for years. Don't forget, in 2018, we had the sex scandals of Haiti, etc., etc. And now we've got Julie Bindel leads with a brilliant op-ed in the Mail, and now Oxfam hounded me out because I backed Rowling Claims employee. This is an employee called Maria, I don't think that's her real name, and she was actually lambasted and sent off and sent out of her job because of an online forum. The online forum, the question was quite innocuous, or quite probing, as Maria would say. Should we still be selling J.K. Rowling books? On the back of her pseudonym, Robert Galbraith, who writes the Strike novels.
Which are superb.
Tom Burke as Strike and Holiday Granger.
Yeah, Holiday
Fabulous.
Granger. I think she's a superb
She is a superb actress.
The BBC have adapted that really well.
They have
you ever
done.
seen it, Freddie? Strike.
I have not.
Very good.
There's
very
a new
good.
one
It's
coming
on the
out.
iPlayer.
Oh, I'll look at it.
Look at them, they're brilliant.
Not Sharp.
What?
No,
I have
Strike.
seen Sharp.
Sharp's
That
good.
was
That's
good.
got Sean Bean in
I
it.
think,
hasn't it?
I think the one flaw is that I think people think they're going to look at a documentary or a drama about a strike.
Oh, yeah.
Or strike, you know, I think that's the only thing.
Superb.
Very good. It's very good.
And it's really well lit and produced in London as well. Anyway, this story is pretty shocking. The online forum, the online forum from employees asked the question, should we be stocking J.K. Rowling's books? And this woman, who came over from Spain in 2017, who has worked with women and children who have been assaulted, victims of domestic abuse, said, well, why shouldn't we be? You know, why should we be not stocking these books? We stock books of politicians, rapists, and murderers.
So
why shouldn't we be stocking
So
them?
the net result is what?
She lost her job. She was hounded out. She suffered mental illness because Oxfam were so woke and they're in this cabal of the trans rights activists, right? With the gender ideologues that are pushing this narrative that not everyone, and I really don't think a lot of people in this country would agree with, for 0.01%
Well,
of the
this is
population.
what I mean. It is the silent majority, but
we shouldn't be silent.
But
Isabel.
is Oxfam not in business to rescue children and keep children safe and all
Yes,
this
but
sort
they
of
haven't been.
All right, OK.
There's a massive fight back. I mean, a lot of people feel like Claire, and they will not be giving money to Oxfam. It's going to really hurt them. And this has happened to quite a few companies now.
Yeah.
You know, the old go woke, go broke.
Go woke, go broke. What do you think? Let us know.
Freddie, let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine. We were just speaking to Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Biggest disaster since Chernobyl, says the Mail. And according to Hamish, he was saying, you know, we're sleepwalking into possibly another nuclear disaster.
It's really, really alarming stuff. Yeah, there's 20,000 people have been rescued. Another 40,000 people need to be rescued. Obviously, both sides blame each other. I heard your contributor saying that there's absolutely no doubt it's Russia. You hear other experts saying other things. I don't...
Have the British and the Americans actually confirmed that
There's been no confirmation. It's just intelligence sources.
Not?
Well, it's hard to prove, I think, is the main problem.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we've made mistakes before. I mean, everybody assumed that Russia blew up Nord Stream. I think it's pretty much established now that Ukraine did that. But it's... I mean, the story is, as it should be, about the humanitarian situation, which is dire. And I think this happens a lot with Ukraine. Is everybody gets involved in, like, who's saying what, who can believe what, and then you've got to remember, actually, there's people really dying and suffering at terrible, terrible levels. And all we can talk about is, you know, who's peddling fake news.
I know. I have to say that the Ukraine fatigue is real.
Yeah.
And people have stopped
really is.
sitting up and taking notice, and I think we're all guilty of it, and I feel ashamed of it, really. We do what we can to shine a light on that. Yeah. Claire, what's Kellogg's up to?
Well, Kellogg's breakfast time. That's exactly the headline. Who knew? There we are.
No, I find it's terrible.
Are you an AI bot? Because you seem to know everything before we even say it.
Well, who makes Ricicles? Is that Kellogg's?
Kellogg's as well.
Well, you can't
Snap,
buy Ricicles.
Crackle and Pop.
You can't get them anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they called
Rice Krispies, which are fine, but then there's Ricicles, which are covered in
They were
sugar.
disgusting.
They're not disgusting.
They are disgusting.
I don't know what a Ricicle is.
They're manna from heaven.
They are not manna from heaven.
We all like
no, they're not Rice
Ricicles, they're
Krispies.
Nicicles, there's tricycles.
Are they like Frosties, but Rice Krispies?
No, they're like these puffs of popcorn.
Rice Krispies.
They're disgusting.
Oh,
absolutely
shut up.
disgusting.
Ridiculous.
It's like eating cardboard.
It's so not.
It is so eating like that, and it's
well,
disgusting. Well, anyway.
Frosties is a beautiful, beautiful cereal as well. Daddy.
Don't set me off again.
Isabel was corpsing for the whole of that first segment.
Well done for holding it together, Claire.
I just
couldn't look at you. I'm sorry.
Right, anyway, Kellogg staff, they're great. And what Kellogg's have now done, they've dropped the requirement for a degree to start in their headquarters. And I think that's great because there's another report given by the management consultancy firm Deloitte, and they have said that the graduates, the standard of graduate that they're getting is so bad that they've got no work ethic, they can't take criticism, and they're just not willing to use their initiative. It seems as if everything has been squashed out of them. But irony of ironies, I sent the clip to my daughter, who's 25, who does work for Deloitte, and she was like, yeah, I know, we were just talking about that the other day. She's only 25. She's, just past it a wee bit, but part of the problem. Her siblings are now part of the problem.
And where is Kellogg's HQ?
No idea.
Old Trafford.
Is it?
Is it?
Is it? So you've got the... What do you mean? You don't know these things?
No, that's why you're here.
Old Trafford.
Oracle at
There's
Delphi.
this magnificent, massive, big red K sign at the factory. So you go through the industrial estate and it's there.
Oh, well, Old Trafford is a place, not just a football stadium. I thought,
Isabel,
Trafford.
You were just winning there for a minute.
Oh, didn't realise that. Oh, so I stopped talking.
You know so much and then you know so little.
I don't know about
Anyway,
football.
it's a sad indictment of young people who have spent a fortune coming out of university, saddled with debt, and they're not fit for purpose.
OK, but the cereal's still great.
Well, they're serial killers now, aren't they? Because they're not doing anything.
What do you have for your,
What
do you have for your breakfast?
Do you know what I have? I have Greek yoghurt. I have tangerines in it and a banana and some granola.
Oh,
that's what I have.
Lovely. That sounds
great.
great.
And it's lovely. I certainly don't have any yum-yums, Eamonn.
That's very unusual.
My daughter here got them for me. So she said to me, hey, Daddy, yum, yum. Yeah, that's what you said to me, wasn't it? Exactly what you said.
Hey, Daddy, yum, yum.
That's what she said.
I can't do this anymore. Freddie, bike theft decriminalised. Now, this is the thing that, I've talked about how much time I used to spend in Amsterdam. Bike theft was a huge problem there. It's now huge here. 98% of cases unsolved. It's not.
So they would steal...
I don't need...
Sorry, bike theft is not funny. It's a terrible
So
problem.
they would steal the bikes in Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
You think it's bike heaven there?
Yeah, but you could be on a night out and people come up to you going, do you want a bike? €10, you could get a stolen bike.
Oh, right.
That was actually a scene from Ted Lasso.
Not personally, but I witnessed it happening.
Right.
But it's happening here now.
It's happening here, and it's effectively decriminalised, is the story, because 98% of cases do not get solved. And despite the fact we have more officers on the beat now, the government hit its officer target. But bike theft is just such a problem, and it's very bad in London.
Do you know what the answer to that is?
What?
All these silly Lime bikes that they've got and the Santander bikes, because a lot of people I know are now moving to that because there is no theft, because you just use them and you leave them.
See,
I love them.
I don't understand that. How can you abandon these bikes?
Well, they are. You know what they're like. They're abandoned all over the city.
So have they got trackers on
Yeah,
them?
you have to take a photograph of it, and then you don't have to take it to one of those banks to park it. You can leave it wherever your destination, as long as you leave it in a good state, take a picture of it, and then people just look on the app and find the nearest one. It is revolutionary.
But what stops someone else just coming along and say, I'll have this? And
Well, it's frozen until you deactivate it. Yeah, it's very clever.
I love them. I use one called the Human Forest. The only problem with it is if you go past Acton, you go outside the human forest.
Oh, it suddenly stops.
And it keeps saying to you, you are outside the human forest.
What is a human forest?
I don't know. It's the area of London that it covers.
That's an interesting concept, the human
Interesting.
forest.
It's sort of pitched as eco.
Yeah. Right, well, I suppose the police are very busy attending all the burglaries now, Claire, which is on the front of the Mail.
I know. I just can't believe this. At long last, police are turning up to all home burglaries. Now, on Monday, we were talking about hoodies and stopping people in shopping centres in Romford from wearing hoodies. And I said I think that's a good step because it was a step, to address the issue of crime and the necessitating the need for, some mitigation here. But we have been long lambasting the fact that not only the Metropolitan Police Force, but also the police forces across the country can't recruit, no retention, and also the sexual mistakes and misconduct from a lot of the officers post Sarah Everard has been through the roof. It's been quite disgusting and very disheartening. And we were all saying, the police need to do this, the police need to do that. So it seems to me that they're damned if they do, but damned if they don't. However, I think this is a really good tack, and I'm really, really for this, that they're actually supporting people and crime and getting back to the communities, which I think is essential.
OK, on your bike now, Claire and Freddie.
Very good.
Bikes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
Very
you.
good listening to you, and see you both again sometime.
Now, from bikes to running shoes, a former rugby player nicknamed the real-life Forrest Gump has become the fastest British person ever to run from LA to New York.
Gosh. William Goodge clocked up 3,000 miles in 56 days in less than 2 months, raising money for Macmillan Cancer Support and the American Cancer Society after his mother, Amanda, died 5 years ago from non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And I'm pleased to say that we are joined by William this morning to tell us more about it. Congratulations to you.
Congratulations,
wow.
yes.
Well done.
Very, very well done.
Very impressive.
And we don't even need to ask you why, because the motivation with Mum must have been immense for you, Will.
Yeah, correct. She's always been my guiding star since she passed away. She's given me an immense amount of purpose to try and make it mean more than just another sad story. We know cancer affects 1 in 2 of us. And everyone knows someone that's either suffering or has gone through it. So, yeah, it's a privilege to be able to raise money on her behalf using her memory and for Macmillan Cancer Support that personally helped her as well.
Well, the really amazing thing is, in terms of your time to do this, you were able to shave 10 days, not 10 hours, 10 days off the existing record. That is a lot, my friend.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's obviously such a big country. I didn't know how long it was going to take me. I needed to use this record that we found as guidance for me, just trying to get there as quickly as possible. But along the way, we kind of shaved off more and more as we went, and I kind of built into it. My first week was my lowest mileage, and then towards the end, I was doing a lot more than when I started. So, yeah, it's amazing what the human body can do, especially when you have a good reason to do something.
I don't know if we gave you the name the British Forrest Gump, or if that was a name that you've kind of been given by friends, or, did the film inspire you, or did you see that parallel, or you're much more serious than him, obviously. But, tell us about the parallels.
I don't think I'm actually much more serious than him at all, actually. But, yeah, at some point it got thrown my way, and I don't mind it. It's kind of It lands quite well. It's quite funny. I mean, I feel I'm a little bit more refined than him. I can't actually grow that beard or that hair at the minute. So, yeah, it's fine.
What was your favourite stretch of the run? Because you got to see the country from a pretty unique way. Lots of people are used to doing it in the car, aren't they, whether it's Route 66 or whatever they go for. But what was the most spectacular?
Yeah, we were on Route 66 for a lot of it until we got to Illinois. But my favourite state was actually Arizona. We came from the desolate Mojave Desert in California, and then all of a sudden there was trees, water, these big red rock mountains. We were running through snow at one point, just a day after being in the desert, as I say. So, yeah, Arizona was such a stark contrast and incredibly beautiful. So that's the one for me.
And you talk about you had a little support team, did you?
Yeah, I was very blessed. I had there was always 5 of us, so there were 2 guys capturing all this amazing content you can see now and then. Robbie Ballinger, who himself has ran across the US, and then a very, very close friend from London, Peter John, who's a great chef. He was really good to have around.
Will, were you ever in danger of not completing it, of backing out, giving up? Never?
I tend to when I'm in these situations, I feel immensely trapped, but this is in a good way. So in my mental space, the only way for me to get out of what I'm doing is to finish. And yeah, fortunately I did.
That Mojave Desert that you're talking about in the Red Mountains, whatever, it's like a Martian landscape, and a lot of people would recognise the landscape from various films, particularly Westerns throughout the years. That in itself must have been intoxicating for you, to carry you through to make you think, gosh, am I really doing this?
Yeah, it was incredible. Part of the time, it just didn't even look real.
Yeah.
Obviously, being from Britain, we have some amazing landscapes, but not on the scale that it is over there. It was, truly remarkable. You go around a corner and you can see the images in the videos now. It was like a movie in its own right, and I saw a lot of different landscapes.
Well, I went to explore the whole area and to study films that I knew, the John Ford Westerns and various things like that, and just put them all in context. And, where Fort Apache and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and, all these films were made, and to walk in the footsteps of John Wayne, where he made these films. And it was spiritual. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So I'm sure your feet were lighter there than they were in other places.
Yeah, I was definitely flying at that point. There were points that looked like the Star Wars movies as well. The first one where they're racing whatever it's called, the spacecraft. So
Yes, yeah.
it was very inspiring along the whole way, other than, no offense to Oklahoma, but it was like a copy and paste job. Every mile I'd get, it would look exactly the same again and again and again.
Yeah, good,
Well, good, amazing accomplishment. Congratulations. And I'm sure your mum's looking down on you, incredibly proud of you. Thanks for talking to us this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it. There you go. We will head to the break. And up next, Rishi Sunak making a splash in the States as well. But should he be concerned about problems at home? Talking about that and lots more after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak announces a global summit on AI as he continues his diplomatic trip in Washington.
Hello there, very good to see you. It is 9 o'clock, Thursday, the 8th of June. Welcome on board to breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister will visit the White House today to meet the US President. Rishi Sunak's first trip to Washington included a celebratory baseball game overnight at National Park and yesterday laying a wreath for troops at Arlington Cemetery.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is denying the government is resisting the release of Boris Johnson's unredacted WhatsApp messages. It follows allegations that Mr Johnson hosted a friend at Chequers while COVID rules were still in place.
Prince Harry says he would feel some injustice if his phone hacking claims are rejected by the High Court. The Duke of Sussex also claimed that the Mirror newspaper group went to unlawful and extreme lengths gathering information on him for his entire life.
West Ham United ended their 43-year wait for a major trophy. They won the Europa Conference League in dramatic style last night. Some West Ham fans, however, were forced to end their evening early after clashing with riot police where the final was held, which was in Prague.
And a health alert has been issued for parts of England, with temperatures expected to reach 30 degrees over the next few days. Vulnerable people in the Midlands and London have been told to be prepared ahead of soaring temperatures, whilst the rest of us get excited.
Well, leading the news so far this morning is that the Prime Minister has announced that the UK will host the first global summit on artificial intelligence safety, and that's going to be in the autumn.
He's due to speak to President Biden later today about the potential risk of the emerging technology.
They'll also discuss further support for Ukraine, actions to bolster energy security and address the climate crisis.
Well, joining us now in the studio is our political reporter Olivia Utley with her overview of the trip. Let's start with AI, shall we? He's declaring that this summit will be held here in the UK and he wants it to be in London. How likely is that to come to fruition, do you think?
Well, Sunak's a sort of self-professed tech geek and he is very serious about that, and it does feel as though he's sort of a bit ahead of the curve on AI compared to some other countries. He met with AI leaders a few weeks ago and they said that one of the top priorities was to make sure that in the coming years, when AI intelligence is set to overtake human intelligence, we mitigate against the risks of extinction from AI. And it sounds as though Sunak has taken that very, very seriously. He's now out there saying that the UK should host this first security conference. It should be the sort of global leader. Some people suggest that Britain isn't best placed to be a global leader in AI. It's obviously a pretty small country, and compared to compared to the US and also compared to Russia and China, does it really have the sort of financial heft to be able to do that? That said, we do have some of the biggest AI companies in the world. So, yeah, I think it's quite possible that Sunak manages to follow through on this and does make Britain, one of the global leaders in AI going forwards, which would be fantastic news for him and would really help him kind of set his status on the world stage.
Absolutely. And the Telegraph reporting this morning, 50,000 jobs already in the UK in AI, and I think 3.7 billion contributed to the economy, which is news to all of us today. So that's all well and good. And he'll be keen to try and do that whilst in Washington. Clearly, and he said this on the flight over, not going to be talking about a trade deal because it's not on the table whilst there's a democratic administration. But are there any little nuggets that he can take away? And we are really talking about nuggets because America's gone quite protectionist in response to the inflation crisis that the world's facing at the moment.
Well, absolutely. We are talking about nuggets. There's talk of a pact on critical minerals being agreed and a new digital deal being agreed. And it's possible that we'll have to wait and see what the details are, but that Britain will get a few tariffs dropped on car manufacturing and will be allowed to benefit from some of the American green subsidies, which Sunak is worried at the moment is quite a protectionist plan, although he hasn't actually gone as far as to openly criticise President Biden for it. His billions of pounds worth of green subsidies for the US is seen as pretty protectionist the world over. But if Britain could benefit from a bit of that, it might not be so bad.
Interesting. Boris Honours will be given the nod by the Prime Minister, but this could trigger a couple of by-elections, which is unfortunate for Rishi Sunak.
It could, yes. We're expecting Nadine Dorries and Alok Sharma both to stand down in order to take their peerages. Rishi Sunak has suggested at some point that actually he might quite like to sort of clear out. Nadine Dorries is a staunch Boris ally and has taken quite a few opportunities to try and criticise the Prime Prime Minister. So while by-elections aren't particularly welcome, they're in relatively safe seats, and actually it might be easier for Sunak to have more pliable characters in those seats than someone like Nadine Dorries, who is such a staunch Boris ally. It also works as a bit of an olive branch to Boris Johnson. We know Boris Johnson is always kind of snapping at Rishi Sunak's heels, and every time we see the Conservative polling dipping, people start talking about a Boris renaissance. So Rishi Sunak would like to get Boris Johnson kind of on side, and perhaps he hopes that this might be one way of doing that.
He also was talking about inflation yesterday. He said it's on me if it isn't halved by the end of the year. And he was asked about the comments being made by his right-hand man, Jeremy Hunt, yesterday, who said he was comfortable with the UK going into recession if it meant we got interest rates under control. Was that an unfortunate turn of phrase, do you think, from the Chancellor? He was trying to do a bit of damage limitation later on.
I think that the Prime Minister, reading between the lines, the Prime Minister slightly wishes that Jeremy Hunt didn't say that, because what Rishi Sunak said yesterday was, I think what Jeremy Hunt meant was that getting inflation down is the top priority. Of course, you know, you talk to plenty of economists, sensible economists, who say that actually Jeremy Hunt is absolutely right, and if the UK goes into recession but inflation comes down, that would overall be a good thing, because the absolute worst thing is inflation, and that makes that any kind of wage rises totally meaningless. But, you know, to the average punter in the street, hearing that the Chancellor doesn't mind the UK going into recession,
yeah, it's a bit grating,
great.
Isn't it? And he made those comments, the Prime Minister trying to mitigate them in Washington. He flies home, I think, the end of today. They'll also be discussing Ukraine, and what are they likely to be hoping to sort of thrash out on that today?
Well, it's sort of more of the same. We're not expecting any big deals to be agreed. Obviously, Britain's been a leader in Ukraine so far, and has been sending over more tanks than I think any other European country. President Biden will be asking Rishi Sunak to continue that kind of support, but I think Sunak would be wanting to do that anyway. So I think really that's just an opportunity for them to show to the world how much common ground there is between the two of them.
Labour have been using, Olivia, a lot of opportunities in the past week or so to talk about green industry, and we're going to talk about this again very shortly. And they have what's called a green prosperity plan. I just asked you because you're dressed in green as well, and if you're signed up to this. What sort of, while the Prime Minister is in Washington looking for the deals that he's looking for, and as you say, trade is not on the table with that, what sort of mileage is there for the green prosperity plan, do you think?
Well, Labour have been talking for quite a long time about a green industrial revolution, and it thinks that's the way to win over votes. It's talked many times about these green industries creating jobs. Those who are sort of more critical of the net zero strategy suggest that actually, you know, if you are taking pretty much all of the oil and gas out of the economy, then you will be losing jobs at a far greater rate than any sort of green prosperity index could put them back in, and that actually quite a lot of Labour's Green Prosperity Fund is pretty unfunded. But so we'll have to wait and see what Starmer says on that, but there is quite a lot of scepticism.
OK, well, on that very point, we thank you, Olivia, and we'll explain to people that later today Sir Keir Starmer will announce his plan to invest alongside the steel industry if Labour wins the next general election. And joining us now, Shadow Business and Consumer Minister Seema Malhotra on this. Ms Malhotra, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your time today. And I'm very interested to know...
Good morning.
Hiya. We're very interested to know what there is to be done with British steel or UK steel or whatever it's called these days. I'm not really sure. And the reason I say that, Seema, is I thought steel was on its way out. I thought it was a bit of a basket case.
What we have seen over the last 13 years is the Conservatives failing to invest in our steel industry. But the reason why it's so important and of strategic significance for our economy is it is one of those capabilities that every nation needs. It is a foundation industry, and it's also a foundation for our communities across the country. And you cannot have a strong industrial strategy where we're looking at how the economy is changing and how we're rebuilding for the long term without knowing how you're going to deliver that. Now, if you're to look at, as one example, how are we going to deliver clean, green energy by 2030, which Labour has set out as a key mission. And that is driven by making sure that we have energy security, by making sure that we have lower household and business bills for the long term, not the chaos and the skyrocketing prices that we've seen. You're going to need to build those turbines, you're going to need to invest in solar, you're going to need to make sure you've got carbon capture and storage. But all of those huge pieces of infrastructure are going to need steel. Now, we have a choice to make about whether we rely on imports of steel for some of this critical national infrastructure, or whether we rebuild and make sure we invest in our steel sector. That's why the announcement today is so important for jobs and for the long-term sustainability of our economy, because we need that strong steel sector with the investment alongside industry to invest for the long term. You need to see those clean steel furnaces, investing in hydrogen and in those electric arc furnaces. Make those decisions now, because what we know is those transitions don't happen straight away. They take 5, 7, 10 years. And if we plan now with industry and with our unions for that just transition, it's going to be how we secure our steel sector for the future. It's a fundamental part of how we deliver our industrial strategy.
But critics of your plan are sceptical that by turning your back on what is a natural resource in the North Sea in a time of an energy crisis, saying no new licences for oil and gas there, which will have an impact on jobs. And, you know, you're saying you'll make up those jobs in these new growth areas. Well, critics, including union backers of your party, say that they don't buy this. They don't think this is plausible. So you've got a lot of persuading of not only people who work in those sectors and your own financial backers that this is actually a viable and indeed a funded policy.
Let me address that directly. There is a clear move across the world to making sure that we have clean, green energy. And we have to invest in that alongside industry to make that a reality for our households and for our businesses. This would put to bed the kind of skyrocketing energy prices that we have seen. And I don't want to see any of my constituents go through what they've been through over the last couple of years because of the government's lack of failure to invest. But we've also seen the oil and gas companies do incredibly well through this time. And what we know, however, is that this is an industry that is already in decline. The world is moving to cleaner energy sources. And if we don't invest now and we don't make that transition, then this is an industry that's going to see an end in due course. But this isn't a change overnight. We know it's going to happen over the course of the next few decades. You're going to see oil and gas still be a part of how we make this transition, and that's what's important. And that in that time we need a plan for how we transition those jobs to where the energy is going to come from in the future.
We've only got a minute and a half, so I just want to get this point into. You'll have seen the poll out yesterday that looked at how Labour would do at the next election under the new constituency boundaries that are coming in later this year. You're sitting pretty, according to this data, focal data for Best for Britain. You can have a 140-seat majority, but it also showed that Labour lead is actually getting smaller and smaller on the Conservatives. It's at 12% now. And I just wonder whether you think that this net zero plan that you're pursuing, kind of under the direction of Ed Miliband, is a vote winner for you.
People are seeing that we have a government that has no plan for the long term, and people are seeing that across our public services that are in decline, our investment not going into our schools, into our infrastructure across the country. Nothing in Britain works the way it used to before the Tories came in. People I know will be looking to a long-term plan for the future and a government that's prepared to make the choices and the changes to deliver that for jobs, for skills and for security for our country. That's the choice that's going to be there at the next election. And all the door knocking I do across the country, people are telling me that the time is up for the Tories and they want to change.
Seema, where is your constituency? The reason I ask you is you're knocking those doors and you talk very, very well. I'm just interested to know your constituency, and is there anything green going on there as well?
There is absolutely a lot going on in terms of green energy and green infrastructure. Our local council, our Labour Council, has a green economic plan, a huge investment in our parks, in our green spaces, ways in which we're looking at ensuring the energy security and resilience of our buildings, new homes being built. There is so much that's going on, but it's also got to be a national mission. It's got to be part of how government and industry work together, nationally and locally, to deliver that energy security for the long term for British families and businesses. That's why I'm proud of what Labour stands for.
And where is Labour doing that? What's your constituency?
My constituency is Feltham and Heston, and in fact there have been new homes that have been built that are using some of the leading edge technology in terms of green homes building. But look, this is also part and Labour's plan for how we make sure that we've insulated 19 million homes, helped to green grants for businesses to make sure that our business premises have also got some of that technology in place, because we want to see that the kind of price rises we've seen in energy over the last couple of years are a thing of the past. Yes. You'll only do that by planning for the long term, and that's a plan that Labour has.
Seema Malhotra, MP, thank you. She is the Shadow Minister for Business and Consumers. Appreciate your time today. Thank you very much indeed.
To the Point is shortly coming up with Bev Tennant and Tom Harwood, and they're here to tell us what is in store today. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we're looking quite a lot at Rishi Sunak's American trip. Of course, this is the second day and a lot is going on today, not least trip to the White House and a crucial meeting with President Biden. That's following after, of course, the late night last night announcement that the United Kingdom will be hosting this first global summit on AI safety.
And, of course, Mike Pence announcing that he's going to stand. So we're going to talk a bit about American politics. Also, British politics as well here. Tom is incensed about Caroline Lucas this morning. He has a lot to say.
So she's standing down at the next election.
She is. She was elected in 2010 as the first ever Green Party MP, and she's put out a statement this morning at around 6 a.m. saying that she's achieved a lot and listing some of her achievements. And do you know what? I absolutely agree. I think she's been incredibly influential in terms of how this government has run itself. And indeed, her campaigns have very often been successful. Now, some people will be delighted that those have been successful. Other people perhaps will be less delighted in terms of her outsized influence within the House of Commons, but certainly there is a clear legacy there.
She hasn't been leader of Greens for some time, but she's still been very vocal on the backbenches.
Exactly, because the Green Party have this dual leader system now, where they swap out the leaders every 5 minutes or so. It's very hard to remember who on earth is leading the Green Party. There's been a different one over the last few years. But of course, Caroline Lucas, being that senior elected representative, is often seen as that senior spokesperson for the party because the leaders are so amorphous.
The green creep is there. It's happening. Local council elections. We've just had a deputy mayor elected as the Green in Belfast. So that's changed times. Thank you very much.
Tom, Bev, we look forward to it. Thanks both.
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk to a Ukrainian gamer, right? Somebody who plays games.
Computer games, Minecraft, no less.
Yeah.
Very successfully.
He's buying his mother a new house. It's like Peter Kay buying a new bungalow tour, all of that. Anyway, we're going to find out more after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
No.
Oh.
It's very nice to see you again. The time is 22 minutes past 9.
A Ukrainian schoolboy is able to buy his refugee mum a house after turning his love of gaming into a successful business. Incredible.
It was, I suppose you could say, a house of fun. That's what they were doing. Maxim Gavrielenko is 17 years of age. He moved from Ukraine to Scotland 2 years ago. He invested his savings into a used Minecraft server. Stop me when you don't understand this. Which he was well, a Minecraft server. So he buys a Minecraft server. I don't even know what that is. And he was able to improve and then sell, improving the lives of his family. There's no point in me explaining this. Maxim,
you explain.
Maxim, what is a Minecraft server?
Hello, good morning. Minecraft server is a place where players who own the game can interact. Basically, that's the whole thing.
OK, so you're very, very good at this. So good that people were tuning in to watch you and you were making a fortune from this. May I be so crude as to ask in, what sort of region of money we're talking?
Decent figures.
And we're talking, enough to buy a house.
How much?
Probably enough to buy a house. I'm not sure.
But did you buy your mum a bungalow? Did you buy her a flat, a maisonette, a apartment, a mansion? What did you buy her?
Currently, I'm planning on buying her a house, so that's best.
Oh, you're early on in that plan. I see. I understood. Right. OK. So you're at school in the UK, and you were at school in the UK when war broke out. And your mum must have been incredibly frightened. You were able to extend your hand and bring her over.
Yes, she did come back to Scotland, back to me after 3 months of war, and she stayed in Scotland for a year.
What year? 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. 1944. Yeah. And Maxim, how do you get so good at Minecraft? Is this practice? Is this luck? Was this a natural skill that you had?
So I've been playing with my friends, and we just started wanting to expand it and interact with more players. And it's kind of went on, and we realized that we're sitting with a server for over 1,000 players that play on it. So
you've obviously, made a fortune doing this. Tell me, I'm a mum of kids. My kids asked me they want Minecraft. I didn't realise it meant they could maybe buy me a house. But I've been so far avoiding letting them get into it. Do you genuinely think it's a good thing? I mean, are you still studying as you should be, or are you completely obsessed by this game?
Definitely not.
So don't let my kids do it.
Definitely not.
Okay, well, if you're on it today, go well and well done, and you keep that plan in mind for your mum.
Yeah.
She deserves that house. Thank you very much indeed, Maxim.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody who watched us this morning and listened to us. And tomorrow it's Ellie and Martin Dobney in from 6 a.m.
Up next, it's the wonderful Bev Turner and Tom Harwood with To The Point. Have a wonderful day.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.